The classroom buzzed with the quiet hum of whispers and the occasional rustle of notebook paper. It was just another Tuesday morning at Silicon Valley Prep, a prestigious school where the air seemed to hum with the pressure of excellence. Among the sea of students sat Liam Carter, perched at the edge of his desk, his notebook open to a page filled with intricate doodles of rockets and planets. "All right, settle down," Miss Karen Whitmore called out, her voice sharp enough to slice through the chatter. She was in her early 40s, with neatly pressed suits and a pair of glasses that gave her an air of authority. To most students, she was a formidable figure, someone you didn't cross. "Today, we'll be discussing the basics of propulsion systems in modern aerospace engineering," she continued, scribbling on the whiteboard with practiced ease. "Let's see if any of you can actually keep up." Liam straightened in his seat, his interest piqued. Space travel was his passion. He'd spent hours watching documentaries, reading books, and sketching ideas for his dream rocket. This was his moment to shine. "Ms. Whitmore?" He raised his hand tentatively. She paused, the marker in her hand hovering midair. Her eyes narrowed as they landed on Liam. "Yes, Mr. Carter? Isn't it true that ion propulsion systems are more efficient in deep space because they don't rely on chemical fuel?" His voice was steady but carried an undercurrent of eagerness. A few students turned to look at him, some whispering to their neighbors. Ms. Whitmore's lips curled into a thin smile. "Well, Mr. Carter, I suppose I shouldn't be surprised you're parroting something you saw on a YouTube video?" Liam's face fell, the confidence in his eyes dimming. "It's a valid question," he replied, his voice quieter now. "I just thought—" "You thought wrong," she interrupted, her tone dripping with condescension. "Leave the advanced concepts to those who are equipped to handle them. For now, focus on understanding the basics, assuming that's not too much for you." The class erupted into awkward laughter, some students chuckling nervously while others exchanged uneasy glances. Liam slumped back in his seat, his cheeks burning with embarrassment. At the back of the room, unnoticed by most, a man in a simple hoodie and jeans sat quietly, observing the scene unfold. His face was familiar, though the disguise helped him blend in. Elon Musk leaned forward, his brow furrowing as he took in the teacher's words. His presence in the classroom wasn't public knowledge. The school had invited him for a private visit to observe their STEM program, a collaboration he'd been considering funding. But now, he found his focus shifting entirely to the young boy who had just been humiliated in front of his peers. Liam Carter. Musk didn't know much about the boy yet, but one thing was clear. This was a moment that could either crush his spirit or ignite something greater. As Ms. Whitmore turned back to the whiteboard, seemingly unbothered by the scene she'd just created. Musk leaned back in his chair, his expression unreadable. He had seen enough. Liam Carter wasn't like most kids at Silicon Valley Prep. For starters, he hadn't come from a family of tech entrepreneurs or venture capitalists. He lived with his mom, Maya Carter, in a modest two-bedroom apartment on the outskirts of Palo Alto, far from the sprawling mansions many of his classmates called home. Maya was a nurse who worked grueling double shifts at the local hospital. Despite the financial strain, she'd fought hard to secure Liam a scholarship to the prestigious school. She believed in her son's brilliance, often saying, "You're going to change the world someday, Liam, but you have to work twice as hard to get half as far. That's just the way it is." Liam never resented the hard truths his mother shared. If anything, they motivated him. His love for science and space had been ignited years earlier when he and Maya sat on their old couch, watching a documentary about the Apollo 11 moon landing. "I want to build rockets like that," 7-year-old Liam had said, his eyes wide with wonder. Maya had smiled, brushing a hand over his curls. "Then you will. But remember, it's not just about building rockets. It's about reaching for the stars, no matter what anyone says." The words stuck with him, even as the years passed and the challenges mounted. At Silicon Valley Prep, Liam stood out, and not in the way he wanted. He was one of only a handful of black students in the entire school, and the weight of being different followed him everywhere. The sideways glances from classmates, the subtle assumptions from teachers, the constant pressure to prove he deserved to be there. It all added up. But Liam had always been resilient. When he wasn't studying or helping his mom around the house, he spent his time buried in books about space. He could rattle off facts about rocket propulsion, space habitats, and the physics of zero gravity faster than most adults. At school, though, his enthusiasm often earned him ridicule. "You're such a tryhard, Carter," one of his classmates, Jake, had sneered after Liam eagerly answered a question in science class. "Nobody cares about your nerdy space stuff." Liam had learned to laugh it off, but it wasn't always easy. His only real refuge at school was his best friend, Ellie Tran, a fellow outsider. Ellie, a Vietnamese-American girl with an unshakable love for coding, understood what it was like to feel invisible, or worse, dismissed. The two bonded over their shared dreams of changing the world through technology. "You're gonna build the rockets," Ellie would say, nudging him playfully, "and I'll write the code to fly them." Despite his determination, Liam often wondered if he was strong enough to endure the constant microaggressions and blatant slights. He had learned to navigate the tricky waters of Silicon Valley prep with quiet grace, keeping his head down and focusing on his goals. But the incident with Ms. Whitmore had struck a nerve. For the first time, he felt an overwhelming sense of doubt. Maybe she was right. Maybe he didn't belong. That evening, as he sat at the small dining table in their apartment, pushing peas around his plate, Maya noticed his unusual silence. "Rough day?" she asked gently, setting her own plate down. Liam hesitated before nodding. "Yeah." Maya studied him, her sharp eyes softening with concern. "Want to talk about it?" Liam shrugged. "It's nothing, really. Just school stuff." Maya reached across the table, resting a hand on his. "Liam, don't let anyone dim your light. You've got something special, baby. Don't you ever let them make you forget that." He nodded, but the weight in his chest didn't lift. Later that night, as he lay in bed staring at the glow-in-the-dark stars on his ceiling, Liam thought about Ms. Whitmore's words, the laughter of his classmates, and the way he'd felt, small, insignificant, and utterly alone. But then he remembered his mom's voice, steady and certain. "You're going to change the world someday." And for the first time that day, he felt a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, she was right. Miss Karen Whitmore arrived at Silicon Valley Prep with a resume that sparkled as brightly as her meticulously polished shoes. A degree in astrophysics, years of teaching experience, and a knack for discipline had secured her a reputation as a no-nonsense educator. But beneath the surface of her professional exterior lay a far more complicated story. Karen had grown up in a small town in the Midwest, where the skies stretched endlessly and ambitions were often limited to what could be grasped within arm's reach. Her father, a strict man with unshakable views, had instilled in her an unwavering belief in meritocracy. "Hard work pays off," he'd often said, though his definition of hard work always seemed to exclude certain people. Karen excelled in school, her sharp mind earning her scholarships to prestigious universities. Yet, she carried with her the biases she'd inherited, even if she didn't fully recognize them. She prided herself on her ability to remain objective and fair, but her judgments often came tinged with the subtle prejudices she refused to acknowledge. When she joined Silicon Valley Prep, she saw herself as a gatekeeper of excellence. She believed it was her duty to weed out those she deemed unworthy, a belief that sometimes skewed her interactions with students like Liam. Her colleagues admired her discipline but whispered about her aloofness. "She's brilliant," they'd say, "but cold." Karen didn't mind. She'd long since decided that being liked wasn't a priority. In her mind, she wasn't racist. The word felt too extreme, too distant from the image she had of herself as an intellectual and an educator. Yet, her subconscious biases often surfaced in subtle ways. The way she dismissed Liam's enthusiasm, the extra scrutiny she gave to his work, the little barbs she didn't think twice about. To her, Liam was a student who didn't fit the mold of Silicon Valley Prep's elite. She assumed his scholarship status meant he wasn't as capable as the others. His confidence, rather than impressing her, seemed to irritate her. That Tuesday morning, when he'd asked about ion propulsion, she hadn't seen a curious mind eager to learn. Instead, she'd seen what she considered an audacious attempt to overstep. But Karen's motivations weren't just rooted in bias. They were also shaped by fear. In recent years, she'd begun to feel the weight of imposter syndrome. Despite her accolades, She constantly worried about being replaced by younger, more dynamic teachers. She resented the way Silicon Valley seemed to idolize figures like Elon Musk, innovators who she felt disregarded the traditional rigor she valued. She often projected that resentment onto her students, particularly those like Liam, whose interests aligned with the tech world she distrusted. That night, after the incident in class, Karen sat in her meticulously organized living room, reviewing student assignments. Her thoughts kept drifting back to Liam. He needs to learn humility, she told herself. It's for his own good. Still, something about his expression when she dismissed his question lingered in her mind, a mixture of hurt and determination. She shook her head, dismissing the thought. Liam Carter was just another student, and tomorrow was just another day. Unbeknownst to her, the events she had set in motion would soon force her to confront not just her biases, but also the very foundation of her beliefs about herself, her role as a teacher, and what it truly meant to be fair. The day after the classroom incident, whispers about the confrontation spread quickly among the students. By lunch, nearly everyone knew about how Ms. Whitmore had humiliated Liam in front of the class. Some thought it was just another one of her harsh lessons, but others felt a pang of discomfort. Liam tried to ignore the sideways glances and murmured remarks as he sat at his usual lunch table with Ellie. She was furiously typing on her laptop, her brow furrowed in concentration. "I can't believe her," Ellie muttered, barely looking up. "She treats you like you don't belong here. It's disgusting." Liam shrugged, poking at his sandwich. "It's not the first time. That doesn't make it okay." Ellie snapped, her voice drawing the attention of a nearby table. She lowered her voice, leaning closer. "You're brilliant, Liam, and she knows it. That's why she's so hard on you." Liam didn't respond. He wanted to believe Ellie's words, but doubt still clung to him like a shadow. Across campus, Elon Musk sat in a meeting with the school administrators, his expression calm but his mind preoccupied. They were presenting a polished pitch about the school's cutting-edge STEM program, emphasizing its rigorous curriculum and commitment to nurturing the brightest minds of tomorrow. "Impressive," Musk said, though his tone was flat. He tapped his pen against the table, a subtle but telling sign of his impatience. The principal, Mr. Hargrove, smiled broadly. "We're proud of what we've built here. We believe Silicon Valley Prep aligns perfectly with your vision for advancing education in science and technology." Musk nodded, but didn't respond immediately. His thoughts kept drifting back to the boy in the classroom. The spark of curiosity in Liam's question had been undeniable. Musk recognized it because he'd once been that kid. The one eager to ask questions, the one dismissed for thinking outside the box. Clearing his throat, Musk leaned forward. "I noticed something in the classroom yesterday," he began. The room fell silent, the administrators exchanging nervous glances. "There was a student, a young black boy. I believe his name was Liam Carter," Musk continued. "He asked an insightful question about ion propulsion, and the teacher, Ms. Whitmore, I think, shut him down." Mr. Hargrove's smile faltered. "Ah, Liam. Yes, he's one of our scholarship students. Very bright. But, Musk prompted, his eyes narrowing. "Well," the principal hesitated. "He sometimes struggles to adapt to our standards. Ms. Whitmore is an excellent teacher, but she has high expectations. It's part of what makes her so effective." Musk's expression hardened. High expectations are one thing. Humiliating a student for asking a question is another. The room grew tense as the weight of Musk's words settled over the table. "I'm not here to fund a program that stifles curiosity," Musk said firmly. "If this school is about nurturing the brightest minds, then it needs to support students like Liam, not tear them down." Mr. Hargrove scrambled to respond. "Of course, Mr. Musk. We'll look into the matter. Ms. Whitmore has always been a valued member of our faculty, but we'll ensure that any concerns are addressed." Musk leaned back in his chair, his gaze piercing. "Good. Because if Liam Carter's experience is any indication of how this school treats its students, then you're not producing innovators. You're producing conformists." Meanwhile, back in the classroom, Liam's day only grew more challenging. During their science lab session, Ms. Whitmore seemed to single him out, nitpicking his work and making pointed remarks. "This is sloppy, Mr. Carter," she said, holding up his lab report. If you want to succeed in this field, you'll need to do better than this. Liam clenched his fists under the table but didn't respond. Ellie shot him a supportive look from across the room, mouthing, "Ignore her." As the bell rang and the students began packing up, Ms. Whitmore called out, "Mr. Carter, stay behind?" Liam's stomach sank, but he nodded, lingering as the classroom emptied. Ms. Whitmore folded her arms, looking at him over the rim of her glasses. "I want you to understand something, Liam. This isn't personal. But this field requires discipline and excellence. You can't coast by on enthusiasm alone." "I'm not coasting," Liam said quietly. "I work hard." She raised an eyebrow. "Then prove it. Because right now, you're not meeting the standard." Liam left the classroom feeling a mix of anger and determination. He couldn't shake the feeling that no matter how hard he worked, it would never be enough for someone like Ms. Whitmore. But as he walked through the hallway, his mind racing, a small voice whispered inside him, "Prove her wrong." Unbeknownst to him, Elon Musk had already decided that he wasn't going to let this situation go unaddressed. The next morning, Liam arrived at school with a sense of determination he hadn't felt in days. His mother's words, Ellie's encouragement, and the sting of Ms. Whitmore's criticism all swirled in his mind, pushing him forward. He didn't know why, but something told him that this wasn't just another day. As Liam settled into his seat in science class, he noticed something unusual. Ms. Whitmore, typically poised and stern, seemed unusually distracted. She kept glancing toward the door, her posture stiff. The answer came moments later when the door swung open, revealing none other than Elon Musk himself. The room went silent. "Good morning," Musk said, his voice calm yet commanding. His gaze swept across the students, pausing briefly on Liam before settling on Ms. Whitmore. "I hope I'm not interrupting." "And not at all," Ms. Whitmore stammered, her usual composure slipping. "What brings you to our class today?" Musk smiled slightly. "Curiosity. I wanted to see how the brightest minds of tomorrow are learning today." He gestured toward the board. "Please continue. I'll just observe." Ms. Whitmore nodded, though her movements were noticeably less fluid than usual. She turned back to the board, resuming her lesson on Newton's laws of motion. Liam could barely focus. Having one of the world's most influential innovators sitting in the back of the classroom felt surreal. But beyond the excitement, he couldn't shake a growing sense of anxiety. Why had Musk looked at him like that? Did he remember him from before? Halfway through the lesson, Ms. Whitmore posed a question to the class. "How do Newton's laws apply to the concept of thrust in a rocket?" A few hands went up, but Liam hesitated. He glanced at Musk, whose expression was neutral, then at Ms. Whitmore, who seemed to be avoiding his gaze entirely. Finally, he raised his hand. "Yes, Mr. Carter?" Ms. Whitmore said, her tone even. Liam swallowed hard but spoke clearly. "Thrust works because of Newton's third law. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. When the rocket expels gas at high speed, the force of the expelled gas pushes the rocket in the opposite direction." "Correct," Ms. Whitmore said curtly. "But can you explain how this principle is affected by changes in atmospheric pressure?" Liam paused, his mind racing. He knew the answer, but Ms. Whitmore's sharp tone made him second-guess himself. Before he could respond, Musk interjected from the back of the room. "That's an excellent question," he said, his eyes on Liam. "Would you like to take a shot at it?" Liam nodded, his confidence bolstered by Musk's encouraging tone. As a rocket ascends, atmospheric pressure decreases, which affects the efficiency of the nozzle. Rockets are designed to optimize thrust in specific pressure ranges, which is why the shape of the nozzle is crucial. Musk smiled. "Exactly. Nice work." The class murmured in surprise. Liam felt a surge of pride, but Ms. Whitmore's tight-lipped expression suggested she wasn't as impressed. As the lesson continued, Musk occasionally chimed in, turning the session into a lively discussion. He asked open-ended questions, encouraging students to think critically. By the end of the period, the energy in the room had shifted. Even those who usually tuned out were engaged, their curiosity sparked by Musk's presence. When the bell rang, signaling the end of class, Musk stood and addressed the students. "Remember," he said, "the world doesn't change because people follow the rules. It changes because someone asks, 'What if we did it differently?'" Don't let anyone make you afraid to ask questions. His gaze lingered on Liam as he spoke, and for the first time, Liam felt truly seen. Not as a student struggling to prove himself, but as someone with potential. As the students filed out, Musk approached Liam. "Liam, right?" he said, extending a hand. "Yes, sir," Liam replied, shaking it. "You've got a sharp mind," Musk said. "Don't let anyone make you doubt that." Liam nodded, feeling a lump form in his throat. Ms. Whitmore stood nearby, watching the exchange with an unreadable expression. "Ms. Whitmore," Musk said, turning to her. "Thank you for letting me sit in today. It's always enlightening to see how the next generation is being prepared for the future." "Of course," she replied, though her tone lacked its usual confidence. As Musk left the room, a buzz of excitement followed him down the hallway. Liam remained behind, his heart pounding. He had no idea what the future held, but for the first time in a long while, he felt like he belonged. Ms. Whitmore, however, felt a pang of unease. Musk's words, though polite, carried a weight she couldn't ignore. For the first time, she began to question whether her methods, her assumptions, were as infallible as she'd always believed. The energy Musk left behind in the classroom lingered throughout the day. Students buzzed about his unexpected visit, replaying his words and marveling at how he directly engaged with them. For most, it was an inspiring moment. For Ms. Whitmore, it was something else entirely. As she walked to the faculty lounge, her heels clicking sharply against the tiled floor, her thoughts raced. Why did he single out Liam? She had taught countless bright students, many of whom had gone on to prestigious universities and high-profile careers. Yet Musk, a global figure, had seemed fixated on the scholarship student she often saw as more trouble than talent. The lounge was empty when she entered, save for Mr. Patel, the physics teacher. He sat hunched over a cup of coffee, scrolling through his laptop. "Eventful morning," he remarked without looking up. Ms. Whitmore set her papers on the table and sighed. "You could say that." Patel glanced at her, his face curious. "Musk in your classroom, huh? That must have been something. How'd it go?" "Fine," she replied curtly, but her tone betrayed her unease. Patel leaned back in his chair, studying her. "I heard he was pretty impressed with Liam Carter." Ms. Whitmore's jaw tightened. "Liam is enthusiastic, but he needs to learn discipline. Curiosity isn't enough in this field. It has to be paired with rigor." Patel raised an eyebrow. "Discipline can be taught. Killing curiosity? That's harder to undo." The words struck a nerve, but Ms. Whitmore dismissed them with a wave. "You don't understand. Students like Liam need to be pushed harder. The world won't give them a pass just because they ask good questions. And maybe it's people like us who are supposed to show them they don't need a pass." "Just a chance," Patel said softly. Ms. Whitmore didn't reply. Instead, she gathered her things and left, her thoughts swirling. Meanwhile, Liam was experiencing a newfound surge of confidence. For the first time since starting at Silicon Valley Prep, he felt validated. Musk's words had not only acknowledged his potential, but had also lit a fire within him. At lunch, Ellie couldn't stop grinning. "I told you, Liam. You're a genius. Elon freaking Musk thinks so, too." Liam laughed. "I wouldn't go that far. But it felt good, you know? Like I actually mattered." "You do matter," Ellie said firmly. "And now you have proof." Still, Liam couldn't ignore the simmering tension with Ms. Whitmore. He knew Musk's visit wouldn't erase her biases, and part of him wondered if it would make things worse. Later that evening, Ms. Whitmore sat alone in her home office, staring at her computer screen. She had intended to catch up on grading, but instead found herself revisiting Liam's work. She read through his latest lab report, noting the flaws she'd pointed out earlier. But this time, she also saw something she hadn't bothered to acknowledge before: potential. The calculations weren't perfect, but they showed an intuitive grasp of complex concepts. His explanations, though rough, revealed a sharp mind working to connect the dots. She leaned back in her chair, rubbing her temples. Have I been too harsh? The thought was uncomfortable. For years, she had prided herself on her ability to challenge students, believing it was her duty to prepare them for the real world. But Musk's pointed critique of her methods echoed in her mind. You're not producing innovators. You're producing conformists. The words stung because, deep down, she feared they might be true. The next morning, Ms. Whitmore arrived at school early, her usual resolve shaken. She spent the first few minutes of class going over routine announcements, but her focus kept drifting to Liam. When he raised his hand to ask a question, she hesitated. A part of her wanted to shut him down, to reassert her authority. But another part of her, the part that remembered Musk's visit and Patel's words, told her to listen. "Yes, Liam," she said, her tone softer than usual. Liam asked about a concept related to their current lesson, the relationship between gravitational force and orbital mechanics. For a moment, Ms. Whitmore considered giving him a clipped response, but instead, she paused. "That's a very good question," she said finally. "Does anyone want to help explain?" The class seemed surprised, but a few hands went up. Ms. Whitmore guided the discussion, weaving Liam's question into the broader topic. Liam's eyes lit up as the conversation unfolded. For the first time, he felt like a valued participant in her class. Ms. Whitmore, meanwhile, felt a strange sense of relief. Allowing curiosity to flourish didn't diminish her authority. It enhanced it. As the bell rang, signaling the end of class, she caught Liam's eye. "Good question today, Mr. Carter," she said. Liam blinked, startled by the unexpected compliment. "Thank you, Ms. Whitmore." It was a small moment, but for both of them, it felt like the beginning of something significant. The subtle change in Ms. Whitmore's demeanor didn't go unnoticed. Over the next few days, Liam noticed she wasn't as quick to dismiss his questions or nitpick his work. While she still held her usual high standards, her critiques felt less like personal attacks and more like genuine attempts to help him improve. The rest of the class began to sense it too. Ms. Whitmore, who had always seemed untouchable, appeared human. "She actually smiled today," Ellie whispered during lunch, her voice laced with mock disbelief. Liam chuckled, shaking his head. "I wouldn't call it a smile. Maybe more like, less frowning." "Progress is progress," Ellie quipped, taking a bite of her sandwich. But not everyone was convinced. Some students, particularly those who'd always thrived under Ms. Whitmore's rigid methods, began murmuring that she was going soft. "She's just doing this because Musk called her out," one student said during a group project. "She's probably scared she'll lose her job," another added. Liam overheard the comments, but chose to stay quiet. He didn't want to add fuel to the fire, especially now that things were starting to improve. Meanwhile, Elon Musk hadn't forgotten about Liam or his experience at Silicon Valley Prep. His schedule was packed with meetings and projects, but the memory of the boys' enthusiasm and the teacher's initial dismissal stayed with him. One evening, Musk called his assistant. "Set up another visit to the school," he said. "This time, I want to see more than just one classroom." Back at school, Ms. Whitmore continued to wrestle with her thoughts. She spent late nights revisiting old lesson plans, wondering how many other students she might have discouraged over the years. One evening, she came across an essay Liam had written earlier in the semester. The topic was, "What inspires me?" In the essay, Liam described his fascination with space exploration, sparked by a visit to a planetarium when he was 8. He wrote about the awe he felt watching simulations of stars being born and the questions that filled his mind as he imagined humanity reaching other planets. "It was the first time I felt like anything was possible," he'd written. "The universe doesn't care where you come from. If you're willing to work for it, the stars are yours to reach." The words struck Ms. Whitmore deeply. She realized she had been so focused on pointing out Liam's flaws that she'd ignored the very thing that made him special: his relentless curiosity. A week later, Musk returned to the school, this time unannounced. The principal, Mr. Hargrove, was caught off guard but quickly arranged a tour. "We're thrilled to have you back," Mr. Hargrove said, his voice oozing enthusiasm. "Our students and staff were so inspired by your last visit." "I'm glad to hear that," Musk replied, though his expression remained neutral. "Today, I'd like to speak with some of the students directly. No administrators, no teachers, just them." Mr. Hargrove hesitated but nodded. "Of course. I'll arrange for a group of our top-performing students to meet with you." "No need," Musk said. "I'd like to choose the students myself." Liam was in the middle of chemistry class when a staff member knocked on the door and asked for him to step out. Confused, he grabbed his notebook and followed her down the hallway. When they entered the library, Liam's breath caught. Sitting at a table, dressed casually in a black t-shirt, was Elon Musk. Liam, Musk greeted him with a smile. Good to see you again. Hi, Mr. Musk, Liam stammered, still trying to process what was happening. Musk gestured for him to sit. I'm meeting with a few students today, and I wanted to make sure you were one of them. How's school treating you? Liam hesitated, unsure how honest he could be. It's challenging, he said carefully. Musk chuckled. Good. Challenges mean you're learning. They talked for a while, discussing Liam's favorite subjects, his dreams of becoming an aerospace engineer, and the challenges he faced as a scholarship student at such a competitive school. Musk listened intently, nodding thoughtfully. You know, he said, when I was your age, I was the kid no one took seriously. Too many questions, too many ideas. But that's how innovation happens. Don't let anyone take that away from you. The words hit Liam like a bolt of electricity. Before leaving, Musk added, Keep pushing, Liam. The universe is big enough for dreamers like you. As Liam returned to class, his heart felt lighter. For the first time, he truly believed that his dreams weren't just possibilities, they were probabilities. But for Ms. Whitmore, the realization was just beginning. The seeds of doubt Musk had planted in her mind were starting to grow, pushing her to rethink everything she thought she knew about teaching. The buzz about Musk's return spread like wildfire through Silicon Valley Prep. Every student wanted to know why he had come back, who he had spoken to, and what had been discussed. The revelation that Liam was one of the chosen few quickly became the talk of the school. Ellie practically dragged Liam aside during lunch. You talked to him again? Are you serious? What did he say this time? He just encouraged me, Liam said, still processing the encounter. He said challenges mean you're learning, and that asking questions is how innovation happens. Ellie beamed. See? Even Musk gets it. You're going places, Liam. But not everyone was so supportive. Some students began to view Liam with resentment, whispering that he was getting special treatment or that Musk's attention wasn't deserved. One of Liam's classmates, Jason, a star student who excelled in every subject, confronted him in the hallway. What's so special about you, Carter? Jason sneered. You've barely been here a semester, and Musk acts like you're some kind of prodigy. Liam tensed but kept his voice steady. I don't know. Maybe he sees something you don't. Jason scoffed. Or maybe he feels sorry for you. Don't let it go to your head. The words stung, but Liam refused to let them drag him down. In the days that followed, Ms. Whitmore's behavior continued to shift. She began integrating more open-ended discussions into her lessons, encouraging students to think critically rather than merely reciting textbook answers. Why do you think Newton's laws were revolutionary at the time? She asked during one class. How did they change the way we see the world? The students were taken aback. Ms. Whitmore rarely asked for opinions. Even Liam was hesitant at first, unsure if her newfound openness was genuine or temporary. But as the days went on, it became clear she was making an effort. Ellie noticed it too. I think she's trying to be less, evil, she joked one afternoon. Liam smirked. Maybe. Or maybe Musk scared her into being nicer. For Ms. Whitmore, the transformation wasn't easy. She spent hours reflecting on her teaching style, poring over research articles and education blogs. One evening, she stumbled across a video of Elon Musk speaking at a conference. In the clip, Musk talked about his early struggles in school, how traditional education often stifled creativity, and the importance of fostering curiosity. Education isn't about memorizing facts, Musk said in the video. It's about understanding how to solve problems, how to think critically, and how to challenge the status quo. The words hit Ms. Whitmore like a ton of bricks. She had always valued discipline and rigor, but somewhere along the way, she'd lost sight of the bigger picture. Have I been teaching my students to think, or just to obey? Liam, meanwhile, found himself at a crossroads. Musk's words had inspired him, but the growing resentment from some of his peers made him question whether he truly belonged at Silicon Valley Prep. During a group project in Ms. Whitmore's class, Jason's disdain reached a boiling point. Liam, can you double-check these calculations? One of the group members asked. Before Liam could respond, Jason cut in. Why? So he can mess them up and let Musk swoop in to fix it for him? The room fell silent. Liam clenched his fists, his heart pounding. He opened his mouth to reply, but Ms. Whitmore spoke first. "Jason, that's enough," she said sharply. Jason looked taken aback. "I was just joking." "That didn't sound like a joke," Ms. Whitmore said. "Liam is a valuable member of this team, and I won't tolerate disrespect in my classroom." The students exchanged surprised glances. Ms. Whitmore had always been strict, but defending Liam so directly was unexpected. Liam nodded, swallowing the lump in his throat. "Thanks," he muttered. After class, Ms. Whitmore pulled Liam aside. "I know things haven't been easy for you here," she said, "but I want you to know I see how hard you're working. Don't let anyone make you doubt yourself." Liam stared at her, unsure of what to say. "Thank you, Ms. Whitmore," he finally managed. As he walked away, he realized something remarkable. The teacher who had once been his harshest critic was now becoming one of his biggest supporters. The subtle shifts in Ms. Whitmore's classroom began to ripple outward. Other teachers noticed her more inclusive approach and began adopting similar strategies. Students who had once felt overlooked started to find their voices. And though Liam still faced challenges, both academically and socially, he felt a growing sense of purpose. The universe was vast, and the stars felt a little closer than before. The weeks following Musk's second visit to Silicon Valley Prep were a whirlwind of change. Ms. Whitmore, although still adapting to her new approach to teaching, became a much more approachable figure. The once cold and unyielding teacher was now actively encouraging her students, allowing them to think critically and push boundaries. Her classroom discussions became a place where students weren't just asked to memorize facts, but to explore ideas. For Liam, the transformation was noticeable, but so was the pressure. As his confidence grew, so did the expectations. Musk had given him validation, but now there was an unspoken weight to carry. Some of his classmates, especially Jason, seemed determined to test the limits of that validation. Liam sat at his desk, flipping through a textbook when Jason walked in with a group of friends. They took their seats, casting sidelong glances at him, clearly waiting for something. "You're in Ms. Whitmore's class now, huh?" Jason said, his tone dripping with sarcasm. "Must be nice, getting all that extra attention." Liam glanced up from his book, trying not to engage. "I'm just trying to do my work." "Right?" Jason said, leaning back in his chair. "Just make sure you don't mess it up. Wouldn't want Musk to be disappointed in you, huh?" Liam could feel the burn of frustration creeping up his neck. He'd learned to ignore the little comments before, but they were beginning to get under his skin. Later that week, during a class discussion on the ethics of artificial intelligence, Ms. Whitmore again allowed the students to voice their opinions freely. The topic was difficult, and some students struggled to grasp the concept. Liam, however, was quick to jump in, offering a thoughtful perspective about the responsibility that came with creating powerful technologies. "Technology can be a tool for great good or terrible harm," Liam said. "It's up to the people who design it to make sure it benefits everyone." Ms. Whitmore raised an eyebrow, a small smile forming. "That's an insightful point, Liam. What do you think, Ellie?" Ellie, who had been somewhat reserved in class, brightened at the chance to speak. "I agree. It's not just about making something that works, but considering who it's for and what impact it has on society." The conversation continued, with more students offering their thoughts, but Liam couldn't shake the feeling that some were only half listening. Jason, in particular, was barely paying attention, looking at his phone. After class, Ellie caught up with him in the hallway. "You were on fire today," Ellie said, grinning. "I love how you just dove into the deep stuff, like it was no big deal." "Thanks," Liam said, forcing a smile. "I'm just tired of holding back. Feels good to let it out, you know?" "I think it's amazing," Ellie said, "but I think you've got some people here who aren't too happy about it." Liam sighed. "Yeah, I can feel it. Jason's not exactly a fan of the attention Musk gave me." He paused. "Honestly, I don't know how long I can keep it up. I don't want to be that guy who everyone resents for getting special treatment." Ellie looked at him seriously. "You're not getting special treatment, Liam. You're just being seen for who you really are. Don't let anyone make you feel small for that." As the days passed, the tension between Liam and his classmates began to escalate. It wasn't just Jason. Others, too, began to look at him differently, as if he was some kind of symbol of what they were not. Despite the support from Ellie and Ms. Whitmore, the weight of the school's unspoken hierarchy pressed down on Liam. He wasn't sure how to handle the growing animosity. He found himself hesitating more in class, second-guessing his contributions. Each question he asked felt like an invitation for ridicule, and though Musk's words still echoed in his mind, they weren't enough to drown out the growing noise of his doubts. One afternoon, during a study period in the library, Liam sat alone at a table. His textbook was open in front of him, but his mind wasn't on the material. Instead, he was thinking about the upcoming science fair. It was a school-wide competition, and he had entered with a project on the viability of renewable energy sources. He had spent weeks working on the project, pouring hours into research and experimentation. The idea of winning didn't even excite him as much as the possibility of finally proving his worth to the people who had always doubted him. But the closer the fair got, the more nervous he became. What if his project wasn't good enough? What if the judges laughed it off? What if he failed? The sound of footsteps pulled him from his thoughts. Jason and a few of his friends had entered the library, laughing and talking as they made their way to a table near Liam. As they settled in, Liam couldn't help but overhear snippets of their conversation. "Carter's got a project for the science fair, right?" one of them said. "I bet it's just some recycled crap. Probably gonna fail." "Yeah, but Musk probably gave him the answers already," Jason sneered. Liam clenched his jaw, the words hitting harder than he expected. He could feel his hands shaking as he looked down at his notebook, trying to focus on anything other than their mocking laughter. He had worked so hard on this project, and now it felt like it was slipping away, becoming just another target for ridicule. But as he sat there, the small voice of resilience inside him began to rise. He had worked too hard to back down now. He had come too far. Later that evening, as he sat in his room, preparing for the science fair, Liam found himself staring at the project board. He had put everything into it, and no one, no matter what they thought, could take that away from him. He took a deep breath and typed a quick message to Ellie. "I'm doing this. No matter what anyone says, I'm doing it for me." Ellie's reply was instant. "You've got this? No one can stop you." Liam smiled. Tomorrow would be tough, but he was ready. The pressure was mounting, but so was his determination. This was his chance to prove not just to Musk, not just to his classmates, but to himself that he could rise above it all. The day of the science fair arrived, and the tension in the air was palpable. It wasn't just another school event. It was the moment Liam had been preparing for, his chance to prove he wasn't just some charity case or a recipient of special treatment from Elon Musk. His renewable energy project, a model of a solar-powered water filtration system, sat neatly on his display table, each component arranged with precision. Liam arrived early to set up, his hands trembling slightly as he adjusted the solar panel angle and double-checked his notes. The room was buzzing with students, teachers, and judges as they walked around, inspecting projects. He could feel the weight of their eyes on him. Jason and his friends passed by, snickering as they glanced at his display. "You sure that's going to work, Carter?" Jason's voice rang out, loud enough for several people nearby to hear. "Seems like something Musk could have put together in 5 minutes." Liam kept his gaze fixed on his project, refusing to let their words penetrate. He had put in the work. No one could take that away from him. He steadied his breathing, his mind racing but focused on the task at hand. Ellie found him just before the fair officially started. She gave him a supportive grin as she examined his project. "This looks amazing, Liam. You've really nailed it. Don't let anyone mess with your head today. You've earned this." Liam gave her a small smile in return. "Thanks, Ellie. I'm trying to keep it together." She nodded and gave him a playful nudge. "You've got this. And besides, Musk is watching you now. What could go wrong?" Her joke lightened the mood, and for a brief moment, Liam felt a flicker of confidence. He wasn't alone in this. Musk's words had given him the strength to keep going, but the support of friends like Ellie made all the difference. As the fair officially kicked off, Liam was approached by the judges, 3 teachers from different disciplines, all with keen eyes and sharp questions. One of them, Mr. Johnson, the school's chemistry teacher, stepped forward first. "I see you've created a water filtration system powered by solar energy. Impressive. Can you walk me through the process?" he asked. Liam took a deep breath and launched into his explanation, detailing the steps involved in harnessing solar energy to power a filtration system. He spoke with passion and clarity, his nervousness beginning to fade as he engaged with the judges. As he spoke, he couldn't help but notice Jason lingering at the nearby table with his group of friends. Jason had entered the fair with an advanced robotics project, but the subtle smirk on his face told Liam that he wasn't impressed with anything he saw. The fair continued with students presenting their projects, but Liam kept his focus. He had worked too hard to let anything derail his presentation. But deep down, he couldn't shake the feeling that Jason was waiting for him to slip up, to make a mistake that would give him the chance to say, "I told you so." Halfway through the event, Ms. Whitmore made her rounds. She stopped by Liam's display, her eyes scanning the project. "Excellent work, Liam," she said with a smile. "This is exactly the kind of innovation we need more of in our school." Liam's heart lifted. Hearing those words from Ms. Whitmore, who had once been his harshest critic, meant the world to him. "Thank you," he said, his voice steady. "I've learned a lot through this project. It's not just about the science, it's about thinking outside the box." Ms. Whitmore nodded approvingly. "I can see that. Keep pushing the boundaries. You have potential, Liam." As the event neared its conclusion, the judges began gathering in front of the stage to announce the winners. Liam stood with Ellie, both of them anxiously waiting to hear who had won in each category. His mind raced, replaying every step of his presentation, wondering if he had done enough. The judges took the stage, and the room fell silent. They began by announcing the third-place winner for the renewable energy category. Liam's heart pounded in his chest. And for second place, Mr. Johnson said, "We have Liam Carter with his solar-powered water filtration system." The room erupted in applause. Ellie was the first to jump up, clapping and cheering for him, and soon the rest of the students joined in. Liam couldn't believe it. Second place. He had done it. He wasn't just the guy who got special treatment from Musk. He was good. As he stepped up to receive his certificate and ribbon, Jason stood at the back of the room, his face a mask of frustration. But Liam didn't care. The validation from his peers, his teachers, and most importantly, from himself, was all he needed. Later that evening, after the fair had ended, Liam sat in his room reflecting on the day. His phone buzzed, and he looked down to see a message from Ellie. "Told you, you'd crush it. Proud of you." Liam smiled and quickly typed a response. "Thanks. Couldn't have done it without your support." As he looked at his project one last time, the weight of the day lifted from his shoulders. The pressure had been immense, but it had been worth it. He had faced his doubts, his fears, and the judgment of others, and he had come out stronger. In that moment, Liam realized something important. Winning wasn't just about the ribbon or the recognition. It was about proving to himself that he could rise above the expectations others had set for him. And as he closed his eyes, the words Elon Musk had spoken to him echoed in his mind once more. "Challenges mean you're learning, and asking questions is how innovation happens." Liam smiled. He was on his way. The day after the science fair, the school buzzed with excitement. Liam's name was being whispered in the hallways, his victory now a topic of discussion between students and teachers alike. For the first time in a long while, he felt like he truly belonged, like he had earned his place. However, with newfound recognition came a strange sense of isolation. While most of his classmates congratulated him, there were still those who viewed his success with skepticism. Jason, in particular, continued to throw barbed comments his way, though it had become clear that he wasn't quite as confident in his own abilities as he pretended to be. Liam's next class was history with Ms. Whitmore. As he entered the room, he noticed the subtle shift in the atmosphere. The students who once ignored him or whispered behind his back were now looking at him differently, some with admiration, others with wariness. He wasn't sure how to feel about it. Jason, as usual, made a loud entrance, swaggering to his seat in the back of the room, but his gaze lingered on Liam. "Nice ribbon you've got there, Carter," Jason said, leaning over the back of his chair. Hope it wasn't just pity from the judges. Liam kept his eyes straight ahead, refusing to acknowledge him. He was done with the baiting, done with letting Jason get under his skin. His focus was on his future, not on the petty insults of a bully who was only trying to bring him down. In the weeks that followed, The unease between Liam and Jason grew. Jason, feeling the sting of defeat, increasingly isolated himself from the rest of the class, retreating into his arrogance. He stopped attending study groups and spent most of his time trying to perfect his own projects, hoping to prove his worth in a different way. But for Liam, the real challenge was in the silence that followed his success. The once lively, competitive atmosphere of his classrooms now felt hollow. His classmates looked at him as if he were something to be watched, not someone to engage with. The distance between him and the people around him grew wider, as if his victory had put him on a pedestal that they could never reach. It was during one of those days, as Liam sat in the library, working on an upcoming essay, that Ellie came up to him, her eyes wide with concern. "Liam, we need to talk," she said, pulling out the chair next to him. Her tone was serious, not her usual playful self. Liam looked up from his notebook. "What's wrong?" "It's Jason," Ellie said, lowering her voice. "He's been talking about you behind your back. He's trying to get people to turn against you." Liam's stomach twisted. He had known Jason wasn't happy with him, but hearing it so directly stung. "I figured he wasn't too happy about the science fair," Liam said, his voice tinged with bitterness. "But why now? Why go after me like this?" Ellie hesitated for a moment. "He's trying to convince everyone that you didn't deserve the second place ribbon. He's telling people you only won because Musk was watching, that you didn't actually do the work." Liam leaned back in his chair, stunned. "He's still using Musk's name?" "Yeah, and it's starting to spread. Some people are buying into it. They're wondering if you were just the lucky kid." Liam's hands clenched into fists. This wasn't about the ribbon anymore. This was about his integrity, his ability to stand up and be counted as someone who earned what they had. No strings attached. "Don't let him get to you," Ellie said quickly, seeing the frustration in Liam's eyes. "I know you did the work, and Ms. Whitmore knows it too. Don't let a bully define you." Despite Ellie's encouragement, the whispers continued to follow him. In class, the subtle glances from other students became more pronounced. At lunch, a group of kids he had once considered friends no longer greeted him with the same enthusiasm. Instead, they exchanged knowing looks, avoiding eye contact whenever Liam walked by. The hardest part, though, was when he overheard one of Jason's friends talking about him in the hallway. "Did you hear? Liam only got second because of Musk. They were just doing him a favor, didn't even really judge the projects." Liam's heart sank. He could feel the weight of their words, like stones in his chest. It wasn't just Jason now, it was everyone, or at least it felt that way. They were questioning his success, his place in the competition, everything he had worked for. The next day, Ms. Whitmore called him into her office after class. Liam had expected a few words of encouragement, but what he wasn't prepared for was the genuine concern in her eyes when she spoke. "Liam," she began softly, "I've heard the rumors, and I want to make something clear. You didn't win that ribbon because of Musk. You won it because of your own talent, your own hard work." Liam looked up at her, feeling both comforted and uneasy at the same time. "But people are saying I only won because of him, that I didn't do the work myself." Ms. Whitmore sighed. "People like to undermine success, especially when it's unexpected. They're threatened by it. But I know you, Liam. You earned that ribbon through dedication. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise." Liam nodded, but doubt lingered in his mind. Could he really prove it to everyone? Could he stand tall in the face of such constant criticism? It wasn't long before the pressure began to get to him. One afternoon, as Liam sat at his desk, scrolling through messages on his phone, an alert popped up, an article on a school blog titled "The Truth Behind the Science Fair Results." The article, written anonymously, questioned the legitimacy of the science fair rankings, claiming that Musk's presence had unfairly influenced the judges' decisions. Though it never directly mentioned Liam's name, the implication was clear. Musk's influence had been a game-changer, and Liam was a casualty of it. Liam's stomach churned as he read. He had been trying so hard to rise above the noise, but now it felt like the world was conspiring to bring him down. He stared at the screen, conflicted. Should he let this slide or fight back? How far was he willing to go to protect what he had worked for? It was a decision he would have to make soon, because the voices of doubt were growing louder, and the tide was beginning to turn. The following days were a blur for Liam. The noise around him grew louder, as if the walls of the school were closing in. He could feel it in the air. The whispers, the sidelong glances, the quiet laughter. Even though he tried to focus on his studies, it became increasingly difficult to ignore the storm brewing around him. Jason's subtle campaign to discredit him was working. More and more students began to treat him like a celebrity that had been handed success on a silver platter. They no longer saw the hours of effort he had put into his project, the late nights of research and trial and error. All they saw was a boy who had gotten a ribbon because of who was watching him. The rumors had become reality in their eyes. Liam tried to block out the noise, but it was impossible. Every time he walked down the hallway, he felt the stares. Every time he entered a classroom, he was met with quiet murmurs. Even his teachers, who had once been so supportive, now seemed to hesitate before speaking to him. It all came to a head one afternoon in math class. As Liam sat at his desk, doing his work as usual, he could feel Jason's eyes boring into him from across the room. Jason's group of friends, Liam's former friends, were snickering among themselves. He knew what they were talking about. Then, Jason stood up. The entire class seemed to hold its breath as he spoke. "So, Liam," Jason said, his voice loud enough for everyone to hear, "how does it feel knowing you only got second place because of a favor from Musk? I mean, seriously, who else in this school gets a personal endorsement like that?" Liam's heart hammered in his chest. His face flushed red, but he refused to let Jason see how much the words stung. He didn't respond right away, trying to gather his thoughts. The silence in the room was thick, everyone watching him, waiting for him to say something. But when he finally spoke, his voice was steady, controlled. "I worked hard for that project, Jason. I did the work. I didn't ask for Musk to come and watch. I didn't ask for any of this." He looked around the room, his gaze lingering on his classmates. "I did this for myself. So if you want to keep talking behind my back, go ahead. But I know the truth, and I'm not going to let anyone take that away from me." There was a moment of stunned silence. Jason stood frozen, his mouth agape, as if he hadn't expected that kind of response. The rest of the class, though, seemed unsure of how to react. Some looked away, some nodded subtly in agreement with Liam's words, but no one said anything. Ms. Whitmore, who had been standing at the front of the room, cleared her throat. "That's enough, Jason. Take your seat." Jason glared at Liam one last time before slumping back into his chair, a look of frustration on his face. But the damage had already been done. The room had shifted, and for the first time in what felt like weeks, Liam felt a small glimmer of victory. He had spoken his truth. He had stood up for himself. Later that day, as Liam sat alone in the cafeteria, Ellie came over and sat down across from him. Her expression was a mix of concern and pride. "That was impressive in class," she said. "You didn't let him get to you." Liam sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I don't know, Ellie. I feel like it's not enough. Every time I think it's over, something else happens. Like I can't catch a break." Ellie looked at him with understanding eyes. "You've caught a lot of breaks, Liam. You've earned them. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. Sometimes, the hardest part isn't the fight. It's staying true to yourself through it." Liam took a deep breath, grateful for her words. "Yeah, I know. It's just, I'm so tired of feeling like I have to prove myself to everyone." Ellie smiled softly. "You don't have to prove anything to them. You've already proven it to yourself." The following days were quieter. Jason seemed to retreat into himself, no longer engaging in the same loud confrontations. But the subtle tension remained. The rumors still swirled, and Liam found himself wondering if they would ever stop. He had confronted the problem head-on, but the aftermath was far from over. Then came the unexpected phone call. Liam was sitting at his desk, working on an essay for English, when his phone buzzed. It was a number he didn't recognize, but he answered anyway. "Hello," he said cautiously. "Liam, this is Elon Musk," came the voice on the other end. Liam froze. "Elon Musk?" His voice faltered. "Yeah. I know this is probably a surprise, but I've been following what's been going on at your school. I just wanted to check in on you." Liam blinked, unable to process what was happening. "Why? I mean, I didn't expect you to be paying attention." I pay attention to people who take initiative, Liam, Musk replied, his tone calm but direct. I saw what you did with the science fair project, and I saw how you've been handling the pressure. I think that's something special. Liam could hardly believe what he was hearing. I don't know what to say. It's just, everything has been so hard lately. Musk's voice softened. I understand. People are always going to try to tear you down when you succeed. But I want you to know that what you did wasn't a fluke. It was real. Your work was real. And I believe in you. Liam swallowed hard, the weight of the words sinking in. Thank you. That means more than you know. You've got a bright future ahead of you, Liam, Musk continued. And don't let anyone try to convince you otherwise. You don't need validation from anyone but yourself. As the call ended, Liam sat in stunned silence, trying to process everything. He had stood up to Jason, he had spoken his truth, and now, Elon Musk, the person who had given him a chance, was reaffirming that belief. It was as if the world had shifted once again, and for the first time in weeks, Liam felt like he was on solid ground. He wasn't just some kid who had gotten lucky. He was someone who had earned his place, and no matter how hard the road ahead seemed, he was ready to keep walking it. The next morning, Liam felt a newfound sense of determination. The phone call with Elon Musk had been more than just a moment of reassurance. It had been a reminder of why he had started this journey in the first place. The sense of doubt that had clouded his thoughts for weeks now felt like a distant memory. He wasn't just going to stand by and let others define his worth. He had earned his place, and no one, no matter how loud or persistent, could take that away from him. He walked into school that morning with his head held high. The air was still thick with the murmurs and glances that had followed him ever since the science fair, but today, it didn't bother him. He was ready to face whatever came his way. As he entered the history classroom, Ms. Whitmore greeted him with a nod of approval. She had been supportive from the start, but now, there was something different in the way she looked at him. Perhaps it was because she saw the growth in him. He wasn't just a student in her class anymore. He was someone who had proven himself, despite the odds. Jason, however, still had his eyes on him. The tension between the two had not dissipated, but Liam refused to let it affect him. Jason's whispers and sarcastic remarks no longer had the power to shake him. He had learned that true confidence didn't come from the approval of others. It came from within. The day passed uneventfully, but Liam couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to happen. He wasn't sure what, but he had an intuition that this chapter of his life was nearing its conclusion. That afternoon, Liam found himself in the school library, working on a new science project. He was determined to prove that his success was not a fluke, that he could do even more and show everyone that his talents went far beyond the confines of the science fair. The project was more ambitious, more innovative. He was pouring everything he had into it. But as he was sketching out his ideas, a tap on his shoulder broke his concentration. He turned around to find Ellie standing there, a smile on her face. "Hey, Liam," she said, her voice light. "I heard something today. I think you're going to want to know." Liam raised an eyebrow. "What is it?" "It's Jason. He's been called into the principal's office. There's a whole investigation going on." Liam's eyes widened. "An investigation? What for?" Ellie looked around before speaking quietly. "He's been spreading rumors about you, and some of the students have had enough. They're saying it's defamation. The principal's looking into it. It might be more serious than just some schoolyard drama." Liam's heart skipped a beat. He had always known that Jason's actions were damaging, but hearing that it had reached the point of an investigation was something else entirely. Part of him felt vindicated, but another part of him felt uneasy. This wasn't how he wanted things to play out. The next day, the tension at school was palpable. Whispers spread like wildfire. The students who had once been loyal to Jason were now scattered, unsure of where to place their allegiance. Liam could sense the shift, but he kept his focus on his work, blocking out the noise. He had already dealt with enough distractions. He wasn't going to let Jason's mess become his problem. Ms. Whitmore called Liam to her desk during lunch. Her face was serious, but there was a look of quiet pride in her eyes. "Liam," she began, "I wanted to take a moment to tell you how proud I am of the way you've handled everything. I know it hasn't been easy, but you've remained focused and calm, and that's something to be admired." Liam smiled, but it felt bittersweet. It's been a lot, Ms. Whitmore, but I'm trying to focus on what matters. And that's exactly what you should do, she said. You've got big potential, Liam, and I think it's time for you to start thinking about what you want to do with it. The words hit him hard. He had been so focused on getting through the immediate conflict that he hadn't thought much about his future beyond the school walls. But now, with everything that had happened, the science fair, the bullying, the support from Musk, it felt like a turning point. It was time to think bigger. A few days later, the investigation into Jason's actions concluded. The principal called Liam into his office, accompanied by Ms. Whitmore. Jason was there too, sitting across from them with his arms crossed, his face pale. Liam, the principal began, I want to personally apologize for what has happened. No student should ever have to deal with this kind of harassment. Jason has been reprimanded, and there will be consequences for his actions. Liam could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on him. He wasn't sure how to react. He wasn't seeking revenge, but hearing that Jason would face consequences for what he had done felt like a small victory. Jason, the principal continued, your behavior has been unacceptable. You've caused harm to another student, and that's something we cannot tolerate. Jason shifted uncomfortably in his seat, his usual bravado gone. I didn't mean for it to get so out of hand, he muttered. You don't get to decide that, Ms. Whitmore interjected firmly. Words have consequences, and you've learned that the hard way. Liam looked at Jason, who avoided his gaze. For a moment, he considered saying something, confronting him about all the pain he had caused. But instead, he simply nodded. I just want to move on, Liam said quietly. I'm not interested in playing games or getting even. I've got bigger things to focus on. The principal nodded, a hint of respect in his eyes. I think that's the right approach, Liam. You've shown a lot of maturity through this. As Liam left the principal's office, he couldn't help but feel a sense of closure. It wasn't about Jason or the rumors anymore. It was about him, his journey, his growth, his future. And for the first time in a long while, he felt like he was finally free of the weight that had been holding him down. That evening, Liam sat at his desk, looking over his new project ideas, feeling more focused than ever. The road ahead was still long, and there would undoubtedly be more challenges. But now, he had a clear vision of who he was and what he wanted to accomplish. And that was enough to fuel him forward. Because, as Liam had learned, success wasn't about the accolades or the ribbons. It was about the journey, the growth, and the ability to rise above the obstacles that life threw at you. The days that followed were filled with a sense of calm that Liam hadn't felt in weeks. The storm that had followed him through the halls of the school seemed to have passed. The tension between him and Jason had dissipated, not through any grand confrontation, but through time, quiet resolve, and the undeniable truth that Jason's actions had caught up with him. But for Liam, the resolution was bittersweet. He didn't want to win because of someone else's failure. He wanted to succeed on his own merits. As the days turned into weeks, Liam found his attention shifting back to what had originally brought him joy: science. The lingering whispers of his so-called unfair advantage from the science fair faded into the background. The more Liam worked on his new project, the more he realized how much he had grown. He wasn't just trying to prove something to others anymore. He was doing it for himself, for the pure love of learning and discovery. One afternoon, as Liam sat in the library once again, piecing together the final parts of his project, Ellie walked over and dropped her backpack on the table with a sigh. She looked worn, her face a little more serious than usual. Hey, what's going on? Liam asked, noticing her mood. Ellie sat down and pushed her hair back, taking a deep breath. It's about Jason. He's been talking to the principal a lot lately, and I think he might be trying to turn things around, maybe apologize to you in some way. Liam raised an eyebrow. Apologize? After everything he did? Ellie nodded. I think he realizes how far he pushed it, and he knows now that it's not just about him anymore. I think he might want to make amends. But he's scared, Liam. He's trying to figure out how to do it without losing face. Liam leaned back in his chair, considering her words. He had spent so long resenting Jason for the way he'd acted, for the way he'd tried to tear him down. Part of him still felt angry, but another part of him felt different. Maybe it was the understanding that people could change. Maybe it was the realization that his victory, his strength, was not dependent on holding on to the past. "Do you think I should talk to him?" Liam asked after a moment of silence. Ellie's eyes softened. "It's up to you. But remember, this is about you. If you're ready to let go of the past, it might help. And if you're not, that's okay too." Liam nodded, feeling the weight of the decision. Part of him wanted to leave it all behind and move forward without ever looking back. But another part of him understood that forgiveness wasn't for Jason. It was for himself. Letting go of the anger might be the final step in freeing himself from the shadow Jason had cast over him for so long. The next day, after school, Liam found himself walking to the courtyard, unsure of what he was about to do. As he approached the area where Jason usually hung out with his friends, he spotted him sitting alone on a bench. Jason's usual bravado was gone. His shoulders were slumped and his eyes were distant. He looked smaller, like the weight of everything that had happened was finally sinking in. Liam took a deep breath and approached him. "Hey," Liam said, his voice steady but not confrontational. Jason looked up, startled, and then immediately looked away, embarrassed. "Liam, I didn't expect you to come over here." Liam sat down on the bench beside him, not waiting for an invitation. "I'm not here to start anything. I've been thinking about everything." Jason didn't say anything at first, his gaze focused on the ground in front of him. The silence stretched between them, and Liam felt the tension hanging in the air. Finally, Jason spoke. "I messed up," he said quietly. "I shouldn't have done what I did. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I want you to know that I was wrong." Liam's heart skipped a beat. He hadn't expected Jason to apologize so directly, without any excuse or deflection. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. "I'm not going to pretend like everything is fine, Jason," Liam said. "You hurt me, and you hurt a lot of people, but I'm not interested in holding on to that anger. I've got too much to focus on to keep dragging that around." Jason looked at him, his face searching for something. "You mean it? You're not mad anymore?" Liam shook his head. "I was mad, but I've learned something through all this. Holding on to the anger doesn't do anything but keep me stuck in the past, and I don't want to be stuck anymore." Jason sat back, as if processing the weight of Liam's words. "I guess I didn't realize what I was doing at the time. I thought I was just messing around, but it was more than that. I see that now." The conversation lingered for a few more moments, but neither of them felt the need to speak further. The apology had been made, and the healing had begun, even if it was just the smallest step forward. As Liam walked back to his car after school, his mind was clearer than it had been in a long time. He had let go of the past, not just for Jason's sake, but for his own. It was a moment of liberation, a small victory in his personal growth. Later that evening, he sat at his desk, working on his science project once again. This time, there was no rush, no pressure. It wasn't about competing for first place or proving anything to anyone. It was about doing something he loved, something that made him feel alive with curiosity. And then, out of the corner of his eye, he saw his phone buzzing on the desk. A text from Ellie. "You good?" Liam smiled and typed back, "Yeah, I think I'm finally good." And for the first time in months, he truly felt it. He was good. More than that, he was ready for whatever came next. As Liam settled into his new sense of peace, life at school seemed to take on a new rhythm. The halls no longer felt as heavy. The whispers and glances that once followed him now faded into the background. His classmates, once divided, seemed to be moving on, each in their own way. Even Jason, though he was still a bit of an outcast, was no longer the shadow that loomed over Liam's every step. But just as Liam began to feel that he could breathe again, something unexpected happened. A ripple that sent waves through everything. It started with an email. Liam had just sat down at his desk to work on his science project when his phone buzzed. The subject line of the email caught his eye. Invitation, National Science Symposium. His heart skipped. He had applied to the symposium a few weeks earlier, not expecting to hear anything back. It was a prestigious event, one that brought together some of the brightest young minds in the country. To be accepted would be a huge honor. He clicked open the email, and as he read through it, His eyes widened in disbelief. Not only had he been accepted, but they wanted him to present his science fair project, the one that had caused all the controversy, the one that had been the subject of so much drama. For a moment, he felt a rush of pride. This was the moment he had been waiting for, the validation of all the hard work he had put in. But then, a wave of doubt washed over him. Should he really present the project that had caused him so much grief? Was he ready to face a national audience, especially after everything that had happened? Liam sat back in his chair, staring at the screen. He had worked hard for this, but he wasn't sure if he was ready to open himself up to another round of scrutiny. He had just begun to find peace, and now this opportunity seemed like it might pull him back into the spotlight. Later that evening, Liam found himself sitting across from his mom at the dinner table. The usual warmth of their family meals felt different tonight. His mom was carefully watching him, sensing that something was on his mind. "What's wrong, Liam?" she asked, pushing a plate of food toward him. Liam picked at his food, the weight of the decision pressing on him. "I got invited to the National Science Symposium," he said quietly. His mom's eyes widened. "That's amazing. That's a huge opportunity, Liam. I'm so proud of you." Liam shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "Yeah, but there's a catch. They want me to present my science fair project. The one that got me so much attention. The one that people still talk about." His mom paused, putting down her fork. "You're not still letting those people get to you, are you?" Liam looked at her, conflicted. "I don't know. Part of me wants to go, to show everyone that I'm more than just the kid they tried to tear down. But another part of me doesn't want to relive everything, especially not in front of a national audience." She studied him for a moment, as if weighing his words. Then, she smiled. "Liam, you've come so far. What happened with that project doesn't define who you are or what you're capable of. If you want to go to the symposium, then go. And if you don't, that's okay too. But remember, this is your journey, not anyone else's." Liam nodded, feeling the weight of her words. His mom had always been his biggest supporter, but she never pressured him. She let him make his own decisions, and now, for the first time in a long time, Liam felt like he needed to take that leap, to trust his instincts and move forward. The next morning, as Liam walked into school, he noticed something strange. The usual rhythm of the hallways seemed off. Students were gathered in small clusters, whispering excitedly. Liam's curiosity piqued, but he didn't think much of it until he entered his first class of the day. As he sat down at his desk, Ellie slid into the chair next to him, her face flushed with excitement. "Liam," she whispered, her voice low, "you're trending on social media." Liam frowned. "What? How?" Ellie pulled out her phone and showed him. There was a tweet, no, several tweets, tagged with his name. "Liam Collins, the kid with the controversial science fair project, has been invited to the National Science Symposium." The tweet was retweeted hundreds of times, accompanied by comments, memes, and even a few videos of Liam's moments at the science fair. Liam felt a sudden rush of anxiety. This is all from the drama. It's all people talking about what happened with the teacher, with the bullying. Ellie shook her head. "It's not just that, Liam. People are talking about you as someone who overcame all that, someone who stood up for themselves and fought back. They see you as someone who didn't back down, even when the odds were stacked against you." Liam looked at his phone, reading through the comments. Some were supportive, some were still mocking. But there was a noticeable shift in the tone. People were beginning to recognize him for the strength he had shown, not just the controversy that surrounded him. For the first time in a long while, Liam felt a sense of control over the narrative. It wasn't about what had happened in the past. It was about what he was doing now. And for the first time in weeks, he was ready to embrace it. That afternoon, as he sat in the library, preparing his presentation for the symposium, Liam couldn't help but feel the weight of the decision he had made. He was going to do it. He was going to take this opportunity, not just for the recognition, but for himself. This was his moment to prove that he was more than the events that had tried to define him. It was time to move forward, to show the world the person he had become. As he clicked through the slides on his laptop, preparing the final touches, a message popped up on his screen. It was from Ellie. "You got this, Liam. No matter what anyone says. You're amazing." Liam smiled, closing his laptop for a moment. He had come so far. And now, he was ready to take the next step. The world was waiting, and Liam Collins was ready to step into it. The days leading up to the National Science Symposium were a blur. Liam's life, once dominated by uncertainty and tension, now felt focused and purposeful. His science project was coming together, and with every new discovery or detail he added, he felt more confident. The social media buzz around his invitation continued, but it was no longer a source of anxiety. It was a signal that, despite everything, he had carved out a space for himself in the world. Ellie had been his rock throughout the whole process. She had helped him practice his presentation countless times, giving him tips on public speaking and reassuring him whenever his nerves got the best of him. Liam knew that without her support, he wouldn't have come this far. The day of the symposium arrived, and Liam found himself standing at the front of his classroom, staring at his suitcase, filled with his project materials. He had packed the night before, triple-checking everything. The printed reports, the models, and the carefully designed slides for his presentation. Everything had to be perfect. His mom gave him a warm hug before he left for the airport. "Remember, you're doing this for you. No matter what happens, you've already won. I'm proud of you." Liam smiled, feeling the weight of her words settle in. This wasn't just about winning or impressing others. It was about showing up, no matter the obstacles, and doing the work he loved. The symposium was being held at a massive convention center in Chicago, and the scale of it was overwhelming. Students from all over the country filled the lobby, their faces a mix of excitement and nerves. Liam's stomach churned as he walked through the bustling crowd. His name badge, clipped to his shirt, felt like a beacon. He was no longer just Liam Collins from his small town. He was a participant in a national event, and with that came both pride and pressure. Ellie, who had also been invited for a different project, found him in the crowd. She waved enthusiastically and joined him in line to check in. "You're going to crush this," Ellie said, giving him a quick hug. Liam nodded, though his nerves were still bubbling beneath the surface. "I hope so. It's a little surreal." The opening ceremony was a blur of speeches and introductions. The enormity of the event made it hard to focus on anything but the sea of faces, the flashing cameras, and the thought of presenting his project to an audience full of experts, teachers, and fellow students. As the ceremony concluded, the participants were led to their respective booths, where they would present their work to judges throughout the day. Liam's booth was in the far corner of the convention hall, and as he set up his project, the weight of the moment hit him. He was here. He was about to stand in front of professionals and peers, explaining the project that had caused him so much grief and had brought him so much growth. His heart pounded in his chest, but he kept his focus on the task at hand. He checked the lighting on his display, straightened his posters, and reviewed his talking points. He didn't know what would come next, but he knew he was ready. And for the first time in a long while, he felt a surge of excitement instead of fear. The first round of presentations began, and Liam watched as other students stepped up to their booths, explaining their projects with confidence and clarity. Some projects were complex, others simple, but all were impressive in their own right. As Liam's turn approached, he felt a shift inside him. He wasn't nervous anymore. He was ready to share his work, to show what he had accomplished. This was his moment. When it was finally his turn, he took a deep breath and stepped up to the booth, his project materials neatly arranged in front of him. A small crowd of judges gathered, and he could feel their eyes on him, waiting for him to begin. "Good afternoon," he began, his voice steady but filled with purpose. "My project focuses on the environmental impact of renewable energy sources, specifically solar power and wind turbines. I've spent the past year researching the most effective ways to harness these resources while minimizing waste and maximizing efficiency." He launched into his presentation, explaining the science behind his work, the challenges he had faced, and the breakthroughs he had discovered. With each passing minute, he felt the nervousness melt away, replaced by the joy of talking about something he truly cared about. As he spoke, he noticed the judges nodding along, asking thoughtful questions, and even engaging in discussions about his ideas. Liam felt a sense of pride as he spoke about his journey, not just the science, but the emotional journey he had been on, how he had dealt with the bullying, the injustice, and the pressure, and how it had only made him stronger. After the presentations were over, there was a brief break for lunch. As Liam and Ellie sat together, eating in the crowded hall, the conversation shifted to the personal stories of the other participants. Liam listened intently as Ellie shared what she had learned during her own presentation. But his mind kept drifting back to the presentation he had just completed. He felt proud, not of the recognition he might get or the judge's praise, but for how far he had come. He wasn't just presenting a project, he was presenting himself. Later that afternoon, the results were announced. Liam stood at the back of the hall with Ellie, her hand on his shoulder, both of them waiting for the final announcement. His heart beat faster as they read through the names of the top students. And the first-place winner of the National Science Symposium, the announcer said, pausing for dramatic effect, is Liam Collins, for his groundbreaking research on renewable energy. The room erupted into applause, and Liam stood frozen for a moment, his mind struggling to process what had just happened. Ellie was the first to hug him, lifting him off the ground in a celebratory squeeze. "You did it, Liam," she exclaimed. "You really did it." Liam couldn't help but laugh, his chest swelling with pride. He had done it, not just for the recognition, but for everything he had overcome to get there. As he walked up to accept his award, a sense of finality washed over him. This was the culmination of everything, the struggles, the setbacks, and the victories, both big and small. He had fought through the darkness, and now he was standing in the light. And in that moment, Liam knew this was just the beginning. Liam's return home from the symposium felt like the closing of one chapter and the beginning of another. He had won first place in a national science competition, his research was praised, and his story was one of resilience and triumph. As the flight touched down, he felt a sense of satisfaction that he had never experienced before. It wasn't just about the award. It was about the journey, the way he had fought through the hardest moments in his life and emerged stronger on the other side. His phone buzzed as he walked out of the airport, the screen lighting up with messages from friends and family. His mom had already sent a dozen texts, full of exclamation points, congratulating him. Ellie had messaged him too, expressing her pride and excitement. The flood of positivity was overwhelming in the best possible way. For a moment, it felt surreal, but as the messages kept coming, he realized that this was his new reality, a reality where he was not just the kid who was bullied, but the kid who overcame it all. The days that followed were a whirlwind. News outlets picked up his story, and local reporters asked for interviews. His school even organized a small assembly in his honor, where his classmates cheered him on as if they were celebrating a hometown hero. It was strange, and for a moment, Liam felt like he was still playing catch-up. The attention was so different from the negative spotlight he had endured earlier. This was a new kind of attention, one that felt earned, not imposed. But even as the praise poured in, Liam stayed grounded. He knew the work wasn't done. The lessons he had learned at the symposium, about perseverance, humility, and the power of standing up for what was right, were lessons that would stick with him for life. One afternoon, he received an unexpected call. It was from someone he had never thought he'd hear from again. "Hello, Liam?" The voice on the other end of the line was unfamiliar, but there was a sense of authority in it. "Yeah, this is Liam. Who's this?" "This is Mrs. Jacobs," the voice said, and it hit him like a jolt of electricity. Mrs. Jacobs was the teacher who had bullied him, the one who had made his school life a living nightmare. He hadn't seen or heard from her in months, not since the day she was put on administrative leave after the investigation. "Mrs. Jacobs?" Liam asked, his voice steady but his stomach tightening. "Why are you calling me?" "I know this is unexpected," she said, her voice soft but tinged with something that almost sounded like remorse. "I've been doing a lot of thinking, Liam, and I owe you an apology. I was wrong. What happened to you was wrong, and I'm truly sorry." Liam stood in stunned silence for a moment, trying to process her words. This was the last thing he had expected. He had spent so long dealing with the pain of what she had done to him, trying to forget the way she had made him feel small and insignificant. He had never thought she would acknowledge her actions, let alone apologize for them. "I don't even know what to say," Liam finally responded. "I've been through so much because of what you did, but I'm not the same person I was back then, and I've moved on." "I understand that," Mrs. Jacobs replied, her voice cracking slightly. "I just wanted you to know that I've learned from my mistakes, and I wanted to tell you that I'm proud of you. I hope you'll find it in your heart to forgive me someday." Liam didn't know how to respond. Part of him wanted to tell her off, to remind her of all the pain she had caused. But another part of him understood something deeper. Forgiveness wasn't for her. It was for him. He had fought so hard to reclaim his life, his dignity, and he wasn't going to let her actions keep him stuck in the past. "I don't know if I can forgive you," he said slowly, "but I'll never forget how I've grown because of everything that happened. I hope you learn from this, too. We all deserve better." Mrs. Jacobs was silent for a moment, and then she said, "I'll leave you to it. I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry." Liam hung up the phone and sat down on the nearest bench, feeling the weight of the conversation wash over him. He wasn't sure if he would ever be able to fully forgive Mrs. Jacobs, but he realized that he didn't need to. His journey was about more than her. It was about him, about his growth, and about how far he had come. As the weeks passed, life slowly returned to normal. Liam focused on his studies, preparing for the final months of his school year. He continued to work on his projects, diving deeper into his passion for science and sustainability. His teachers recognized the change in him, and even his classmates seemed to respect him in a way they hadn't before. He had found his voice. He had found his purpose. And then, one day, as he was walking home from school, he received another message, this time from an unexpected source. It was from Elon Musk. "Liam, I saw your project at the symposium. I was impressed by your research and your resilience. Keep pushing the boundaries, and I look forward to seeing what you accomplish in the future." Liam's heart raced as he read the message. Elon Musk? The Elon Musk? It seemed almost impossible. But there it was, a message from one of the most influential figures in the world. With a sense of awe, Liam typed his response, "Thank you. Your words mean more to me than you know. I won't stop pushing forward." As he hit send, he felt a sense of closure. It wasn't about the teachers who had hurt him, or the bullies who had tried to tear him down. It was about the people who believed in him, the ones who recognized his potential. And in that moment, Liam Collins knew he was on the right path. He had survived the storm, and now he was ready to build something greater. The weeks following Liam's interaction with Elon Musk were a whirlwind. His story had gone beyond just local recognition. It had caught the attention of innovators, educators, and even organizations dedicated to youth empowerment. His inbox was flooded with emails, and his social media was buzzing with messages of encouragement and support. Liam had become a symbol of perseverance, and the weight of it all was both exciting and overwhelming. Ellie, of course, had been there through it all. She'd been his rock, supporting him every step of the way, and now she was watching him take his place in the world with pride. They spent hours talking about their future plans, dreaming of college and careers in science and technology. Ellie had always been a bright student, but seeing Liam rise to new heights had sparked something in her too. She was determined to carve out her own path, one that would allow her to make a difference just like him. The spring semester flew by, and as the school year began to wind down, Liam felt a sense of calm he had never experienced before. He had faced the worst of it, the bullying, the isolation, the betrayal, and had emerged victorious. But what stood out most wasn't just the accolades or the attention. It was the inner peace he had found by simply being himself and refusing to let anyone define who he was or what he could achieve. One afternoon, just a few weeks before graduation, Liam found himself alone in the school courtyard, sitting on a bench with his thoughts. The familiar faces of his classmates surrounded him, but for the first time in a long time, he didn't feel like an outsider. He wasn't just the kid who had struggled with bullying. He was Liam, the kid who had taken on the world and come out on top. Ellie sat beside him, breaking him out of his thoughts. "You okay?" Liam smiled, feeling the warmth of her presence. "Yeah, just thinking about how far I've come." "You've come a long way," she said with a grin. "I'm so proud of you, Liam. Seriously. I couldn't have done it without you," Liam replied, his voice sincere. "You've been there for me every step of the way. You believed in me when I didn't believe in myself." Ellie shrugged, her smile still bright. "I knew you had it in you. You've always had it in you." Liam's heart swelled with gratitude. Ellie had been the friend he never knew he needed, and now, as graduation loomed closer, he realized just how much her friendship had shaped him. The night of graduation was a celebration like no other. The entire town turned out for the ceremony, and Liam felt a sense of pride that he had never imagined possible. He had faced so much adversity, but here he was, walking across the stage to accept his diploma. Something that once felt impossible was now a reality. When it was Liam's turn to receive his diploma, the entire auditorium erupted into applause. It wasn't just because of his academic achievements. It was because his story had touched their lives. He had been an example of courage and resilience, and his success was a testament to the strength of the human spirit. As he took his seat, he saw his mom in the crowd, her face glowing with pride. Ellie waved at him from the front row, her eyes shining with excitement. For the first time in a long while, Liam allowed himself to fully feel the weight of his accomplishments. He had made it. The summer after graduation was a time of reflection and preparation for what came next. Liam had applied to several prestigious universities, including a program at Stanford, which had been one of his dream schools. But regardless of where he ended up, he knew that he was no longer defined by his past. He was defined by his potential, by the work he had done and the person he had become. One afternoon, Liam was sitting at his desk, going through some of the letters and awards he had received. He smiled at the memories, but something caught his eye, a letter from Elon Musk's office. He opened it carefully, wondering what it might say. "Dear Liam, we have been following your progress since the symposium and are deeply impressed with your work and dedication. We would like to offer you an internship opportunity at one of our research facilities. We believe your innovative ideas on renewable energy could contribute significantly to the work we are doing, and we would be honored to have you join our team for the summer." Liam's hands trembled as he read the letter. An internship at one of Elon Musk's companies? It was everything he had ever dreamed of and more. It was an opportunity to work alongside the people he admired, to learn from the best, and to make a real impact on the world. The news of the internship offer spread quickly. His family was ecstatic, and Ellie was practically jumping for joy. "This is incredible, Liam," she said. "You've come so far, and now look at you, about to change the world." Liam felt a mix of excitement and disbelief. "I can't believe it. It feels unreal." "You've earned it," Ellie said with a smile. "You've put in the work, and now the world is recognizing you for it." It was true. Liam had fought through every obstacle life had thrown his way: bullying, rejection, and even self-doubt. And now, at the threshold of adulthood, he was on the cusp of something greater than he could have ever imagined. As the summer began, Liam found himself settling into his new role at the internship. The work was challenging and demanding, but he thrived in the environment. He was surrounded by brilliant minds, each person contributing to cutting-edge research that would change the world. It was everything he had hoped for, and more. At the end of the summer, Liam had not only gained valuable experience, but also built lasting relationships with mentors and peers. His future felt limitless, and the possibilities were endless. He thought back to that moment at the National Science Symposium, the moment when everything changed for him. From being a bullied student to being offered an internship by one of the world's most influential entrepreneurs, Liam had come full circle. And as he looked forward to the next chapter of his life, he knew one thing for certain. No matter where life took him, he would continue to push boundaries, challenge himself, and never let anything, or anyone, stand in his way. The journey was just beginning. Liam's internship at one of Elon Musk's companies was everything he had dreamed of and more. As the summer days turned into weeks, he found himself increasingly immersed in groundbreaking projects that were shaping the future of energy and technology. The fast-paced environment, the cutting-edge research, and the brilliant minds surrounding him made him feel as if he had truly found his place. But despite the excitement of this new chapter, a part of Liam couldn't shake the feeling that his journey had only just begun. The recognition he had received from winning the competition, the support from his family and friends, and the opportunity to work with industry leaders had opened doors for him, but he still carried the weight of his past with him. In quiet moments, he reflected on the bullying he had endured, the pain of feeling like an outsider for so long. He thought about the teachers who had belittled him, the classmates who had ignored him, and how those experiences had shaped the person he had become. He realized that the anger and hurt he had felt had given way to something more powerful, resilience. And as much as he had moved forward, he knew he couldn't forget where he came from. He had to keep pushing, not just for himself but for others who were still struggling, who still felt like they didn't belong. One evening, as Liam was walking through the bustling campus of the research facility, he bumped into a familiar face, a fellow intern named Ava. She had been with the company for a few months and had taken a special interest in Liam's work since the first day they met. She was a talented engineer, sharp and driven, with a passion for sustainability that matched his own. "Hey, Liam," she called, waving as she jogged up to him. "You got a minute?" "Yeah, of course," Liam said, smiling. "What's up?" "I was thinking about something," Ava said, her tone serious but excited. "You've been working on that renewable energy project, right? The one with the solar-powered storage solution?" Liam nodded, feeling a surge of pride. "Yeah, we've been testing some new prototypes, trying to increase efficiency. It's looking promising." Ava's eyes sparkled. "Well, I've got an idea. What if we took this to schools? To high schools, especially in underserved communities? We could create a program to teach kids how to build and implement sustainable technology. Imagine what that could do for kids like us, kids who don't have access to the same resources as others." Liam was taken aback for a moment. "You want to bring this project to high school students?" "Exactly," Ava said. "I mean, think about it. The future of technology is in the hands of the next generation. If we can teach them how to build sustainable solutions, we're not just giving them knowledge, we're giving them the tools to change the world." Liam's mind raced. It was a brilliant idea, one that could have a lasting impact. He had always believed that knowledge should be shared, that everyone deserved an opportunity to learn and grow, no matter their background. This was the chance to give back, to make sure that the future wasn't just shaped by a few, but by everyone. "That's incredible," Liam said, his voice filled with enthusiasm. "I think it could work, but we'd need to figure out how to get it off the ground. Funding, curriculum, partnerships." "I've already got some ideas," Ava said, grinning. "I've been talking to a few people, and I think we could get some major backers interested. It's going to take some work, but we can make it happen." The more they talked, the more the idea took shape. By the end of the conversation, Liam felt a sense of excitement he hadn't felt in a while. This wasn't just about his own success anymore. It was about giving others the chance to succeed too. Over the next few months, Liam and Ava worked tirelessly to bring their vision to life. They developed a curriculum that would teach high school students how to build sustainable energy systems using basic materials. They partnered with local schools, pitched the idea to potential sponsors, and recruited a team of passionate volunteers to help teach the workshops. It was a challenging process. There were roadblocks along the way, from securing funding to getting buy-in from schools. But with each challenge, Liam found himself relying on the lessons he had learned during his own struggles. He had faced adversity before, and now he was determined to overcome it again, but this time for a cause greater than himself. The first pilot program was a resounding success. High school students from underserved communities participated in the workshops, learning how to build solar-powered devices and exploring the principles of renewable energy. The kids were inspired, their eyes lighting up as they worked with their hands and created something that could change their world. And as they presented their projects to Liam and Ava, Liam couldn't help but feel a profound sense of fulfillment. This wasn't just about technology or innovation. It was about empowerment. It was about showing young people that they had the power to shape the future, no matter where they came from. Months passed, and the program grew. Schools in neighboring districts expressed interest, and the media began to take notice. Liam and Ava were invited to speak at conferences, sharing their vision for a sustainable future powered by young minds. They were invited to meet with philanthropists and venture capitalists who believed in their mission and wanted to help fund its expansion. Liam's success was no longer just about his own achievements. It was about the ripple effect he had created, about the impact he was having on the lives of others. He had found a new purpose, one that wasn't just about building a career but about building a community, a movement of young people who were determined to make the world a better place. One afternoon, as Liam sat in a meeting with a potential donor, he received a message that would change everything. It was an email from Elon Musk's team. Liam, we've been following your progress and the impact you're making. We'd like to extend an offer for a collaboration between your program and our company. We believe that together, we can make an even bigger difference in the world. Liam couldn't believe it. This was the opportunity he had been working toward. An opportunity to partner with the very company that had inspired him in the first place. He looked up at Ava, who was sitting across the table, watching him closely. Her eyes widened as he showed her the email. "This is it," she said, her voice filled with awe. "This is our big break." Liam smiled, feeling a rush of excitement. This is just the beginning. And as he responded to the email, confirming the collaboration, he realized that the ripple effect had already begun. Together, they were about to take their program to the next level, reaching more students, empowering more young people, and changing the world, one sustainable solution at a time. The journey was far from over, but now, it felt like the world was wide open, and Liam was ready to take it on, one step at a time. Liam and Ava were buzzing with excitement after receiving Elon Musk's email. It felt surreal that the same company that had inspired Liam's own transformation was now offering to collaborate with their program. It was more than just a professional opportunity. It was the validation of everything they had worked for. A dream to inspire young people to take control of their future and use technology to make the world better. The first meeting with Musk's team was set up for the following week. The anticipation weighed heavily on Liam, but he was determined to make the most of this opportunity. It wasn't just about impressing them with his ideas. It was about showing them the heart behind the project, the passion that had driven him from the very beginning. When the day of the meeting arrived, Liam and Ava sat nervously in a conference room at the research facility, their laptops open in front of them. They had prepared a presentation showcasing their work so far, highlighting the success of the pilot program, the positive impact it had on the students, and their vision for scaling it to schools nationwide. The door opened, and in walked a group of Musk's team members, including the man himself. Elon Musk's presence was as commanding as it was understated. He wore a casual black t-shirt and jeans, but there was an intensity to his gaze that made Liam feel as though the world was watching. "Liam, Ava," Elon greeted them with a smile. "It's great to finally meet you both in person." Liam stood up, his heart racing. "Thank you for taking the time to meet with us. We're honored." Elon nodded and took a seat. "I've been following your progress for a while now. What you're doing is impressive. You're teaching kids how to build things, solve real-world problems, and make a difference. I think that's something worth supporting." Liam's nerves eased slightly at Elon's words, but he quickly refocused. This was the moment he had been preparing for. "We've seen the impact our program has on students, especially in underserved communities," Liam began. "But we believe there's so much more potential here. With your support, we could expand it to schools across the country, teach thousands of students how to harness technology to solve problems like energy crises, pollution, and sustainability." Ava jumped in, her voice filled with excitement. "We're already working with a few school districts to integrate renewable energy curriculum into their science programs. But we need more resources, funding, materials, and industry connections to make this scalable." Elon listened intently, his fingers tapping lightly on the table. "I like the direction you're taking. What you're proposing aligns with a lot of what we're trying to do at Tesla and SpaceX, empowering people, especially young people, to build the future they want to see. If we can help you scale this, it could have a massive impact." Liam couldn't believe his ears. "You would support us in scaling this?" "Absolutely," Elon replied, leaning forward. "But there's one condition. We want you to take this beyond the classroom. We want to create something that not only teaches students about renewable energy, but also gives them the opportunity to work on live projects that could make a tangible difference in the world. Think about it. Students designing solar grids for low-income communities, building wind-powered devices for rural areas, or even developing eco-friendly solutions for urban centers." Ava's eyes lit up. "That's exactly the kind of real-world application we've been dreaming of." Liam's mind raced. The possibilities were endless. The program wasn't just about learning. It was about creating, innovating, and directly contributing to the solution. This was the next step toward fulfilling their mission. "We're in," Liam said, his voice steady with determination. "Let's make this happen." Over the next few months, Liam and Ava worked closely with Elon's team to map out a strategy for expanding the program. They established new partnerships with schools, renewable energy companies, and nonprofit organizations. They developed an ambitious curriculum that included both classroom learning and hands-on projects, giving students the chance to apply their knowledge to real-world challenges. The program grew quickly, and soon they were rolling out workshops in schools across the country. Students, eager to be part of something bigger, dived into the work with enthusiasm. They were building solar-powered water purifiers for communities in need, designing low-cost wind turbines, and even working on new ways to recycle plastic into sustainable materials. As the program expanded, so did the recognition. Media outlets began to take notice of the impact Liam and Ava were making. Interviews, features, and speaking engagements flooded in. They were invited to share their story at conferences, where they spoke about the power of education, innovation, and collaboration. Liam's story, once one of struggle and adversity, had now become one of hope, leadership, and change. But despite all the success, Liam never forgot the lessons he had learned along the way. Every time he stood in front of a classroom, watching young minds light up as they learned to build sustainable technology, he was reminded of why he started this journey in the first place. It wasn't about the accolades. It was about creating opportunities for others, especially those who hadn't been given a fair chance. One afternoon, as Liam and Ava were preparing for another conference presentation, they received a call from a school principal in a remote part of the country. "We've heard about the work you're doing," the principal said, "and we want to bring your program to our students. We're in a rural area, and many of our kids don't have access to the resources you're providing. But we believe they could make a difference too." Liam felt a sense of pride swell inside him. This was the kind of impact they had dreamed of, a program that reached kids everywhere, no matter where they lived. Ava turned to Liam, her eyes shining. "This is exactly what we were hoping for, isn't it? Reaching kids in places like this, making sure no one gets left behind." Liam nodded, his heart full. "Exactly. This is just the beginning." As the years passed, the program continued to grow, empowering more students to become the changemakers of tomorrow. Liam and Ava remained at the helm, working tirelessly to refine the curriculum, develop new projects, and ensure that every student who entered their program had the tools and resources to succeed. And as Liam stood at the podium one day, speaking to a new class of students about the importance of innovation, sustainability, and resilience, he couldn't help but reflect on his own journey. From a young boy who had faced bullying and adversity, to an intern at one of the world's most influential companies, to the founder of a nationwide program that was changing lives, he had come a long way. But more importantly, he had helped others come along with him. The world had changed since those early days. It was no longer a place where people felt alone in their struggles. It was a place where anyone, no matter their background, could rise and make a difference. And as Liam looked out at the students before him, he knew one thing for certain. The future was bright, and it belonged to them. As the program grew, Liam found himself at the center of a movement, one that was no longer just about renewable energy, but about the broader mission of educational reform and social justice. With every school they partnered with, every student they empowered, the impact of their work rippled outward, touching lives and inspiring communities. However, with growth came new challenges. The increased scale meant more logistics to manage, more stakeholders to appease, and more ambitious goals to meet. And though Liam had always thrived under pressure, the responsibility of managing such a large-scale initiative began to weigh heavily on him. It wasn't just about running a successful program. It was about maintaining its integrity and vision as it expanded. One day, while sitting in a meeting with a group of investors and corporate partners, Liam realized that the original passion and purpose of the program seemed to be at risk of getting lost in the corporate jargon and metrics. The room was filled with people who saw the program as an opportunity to market their products or gain visibility. There was talk of scaling it further, reaching even more students, but with a heavy focus on the numbers, profitability, market expansion, and brand recognition. Liam's heart sank. He had built this program with the hope of empowering young people, particularly those from disadvantaged backgrounds, to build the future they wanted. He had never intended for it to become another corporate venture. Later that evening, Liam met with Ava to debrief. They sat at a small cafe near the office, the sounds of the city buzzing around them. Ava could tell something was weighing on him. "What's going on, Liam?" she asked, her voice filled with concern. "You've been quiet since the meeting." Liam sighed, running a hand through his hair. "It just doesn't feel right, Ava. I get that we need funding and support to keep growing, but I don't want to lose sight of what made this program special in the first place. It's not about how many schools we can sign up or how much revenue we can bring in. It's about giving kids a chance to learn, to create, to make a real impact." Ava nodded thoughtfully, taking a sip of her coffee. "I get it. It's easy to get caught up in the numbers and the business side of things. But we're the ones who built this. We're the ones who set the vision. If we don't stay true to that, it'll lose its soul." Liam's eyes met hers. "Exactly. And I don't want to be the guy who lets that happen." Ava placed her cup down, her expression serious. "So what do we do?" Liam thought for a moment. "I think it's time to remind everyone, ourselves included, why we started this in the first place. We need to refocus on the mission. Maybe it's time to take a step back from the business talk and revisit our core values. We don't need to compromise on the heart of the program." The next few weeks were pivotal. Liam and Ava took the time to reassess their mission and what they truly wanted to achieve. They sat down with their core team, discussed the feedback from schools, and listened to the stories of the students whose lives had been transformed by the program. It was clear to them that, while the program had grown, its foundation was still solid, built on the values of empowerment, opportunity, and hope. But the road ahead wasn't going to be easy. They had to balance the demands of growth with the desire to maintain the authenticity of their mission. They made the decision to set stricter guidelines for partnerships, carefully selecting investors and corporate sponsors whose values aligned with theirs. They also focused on community-driven outreach, ensuring that students and educators had a voice in the program's development. The challenges didn't end there. As the program grew, so did the pressure to perform. Media outlets, politicians, and even some of their original supporters began to push for faster expansion, urging Liam to take the program global. There was an overwhelming sense that the world was watching, waiting for him to lead this initiative to new heights. And yet, Liam remained grounded. Despite the external pressures, he kept his focus on the students, on their faces when they learned something new, when they saw their own potential. His drive to change the world for the better wasn't motivated by fame or recognition, but by the hope that he could leave behind a legacy of empowerment. One evening, as Liam stood at the front of a classroom filled with eager high school students, he couldn't help but feel a sense of peace wash over him. This was what it was all about. The students in this room, the future innovators and leaders who would carry the torch forward. The students were presenting their final projects, sustainable energy solutions they had developed with their own hands, solutions designed to address real-world issues like water scarcity, energy access, and pollution. Their ideas were creative, ambitious, and full of promise. As Liam walked around the room, offering feedback and encouragement, he realized how far the program had come. Ava approached him as he was finishing up with the last group. "How are you feeling?" she asked, her voice light. Liam smiled, feeling a warmth in his chest. "I'm feeling good. Really good. This is what it's all about." Ava raised an eyebrow. "You sure? Because I know you've been stressed out lately with everything going on." Liam nodded, taking a deep breath. "I have been. But seeing these kids, watching them present their projects with so much confidence, knowing that they're learning to solve problems that matter, it reminds me why I started this in the first place." Ava smiled, her eyes filled with pride. "You're doing something incredible, Liam. I know it's hard to juggle everything, but you're making a difference." Liam looked out over the room, his heart swelling with gratitude. He didn't need to scale the program to every corner of the world. What mattered most was that they were reaching the kids who needed it most, giving them the tools to change their own futures. "We're doing something incredible, Ava," Liam said softly, "and we're just getting started." As the months went by, Liam's focus remained on the core mission. They scaled thoughtfully, incorporating feedback from educators, students, and communities along the way. The program continued to grow, but always with a deep commitment to maintaining its authenticity and impact. And though the challenges were many, Liam found strength in the students he met, in the work they were doing together, and in the knowledge that they were shaping the future, one student at a time. The ripple effect that began with one boy's journey had turned into a tidal wave of change, and Liam was ready to ride it as far as it could go. Liam woke up to a crisp morning, the sun streaming through the window of his office. He could feel the weight of the day ahead, the expectations from investors, the progress reports to review, and the constant balancing act between scaling the program and keeping the mission pure. But there was something else too, an energy that had been building over the last few months. He had been receiving messages from educators, students, and parents, sharing stories of how the program had impacted their lives in ways that went beyond just learning about renewable energy. Liam had always believed that education was the key to unlocking potential, but now, it was becoming clear that the program wasn't just teaching students how to build solar panels or design wind turbines. It was teaching them to think critically, to solve problems creatively, and, most importantly, to believe that they could make a difference in the world. This was the ripple effect he had always dreamed of. One afternoon, Liam received an unexpected phone call. It was from a teacher named Mrs. Collins, who had been using the program in her school district in rural Arkansas. Her voice was full of emotion as she spoke. "I just wanted to take a moment to thank you," she said. "The impact this program has had on my students is beyond what I could have ever imagined. You're not just teaching them about renewable energy. You're teaching them that they matter, that they have the power to change their futures." One of my students, Jake, he used to struggle with motivation. He's from a tough background, and he didn't think college was an option for him. But after going through your program, he's decided to pursue an engineering degree. He told me last week, "I'm going to make the world better with what I've learned." It's moments like that that make everything worth it. Liam's throat tightened. Hearing the tangible impact of the program in a real student's life, especially one from a community that often felt forgotten, was powerful beyond words. It reminded him of why he had worked so hard, why he had fought through the early challenges, and why he was willing to continue pushing forward even when it seemed like the odds were stacked against him. "Thank you for sharing that," Liam said, his voice thick with emotion. "Stories like Jake's are what keep us going. I'm so proud of him, and proud of you, for making it happen in your classroom." Later that week, Liam and Ava sat in their office, discussing the progress of their partnerships with schools across the country. The program had expanded into dozens of districts, with hundreds of students now participating. And yet, there was still so much to be done. They were starting to see the ripple effect in ways they hadn't anticipated. The teachers, students, and community leaders were becoming advocates for the program, sharing their own success stories and encouraging others to join in. What had started as a small initiative had turned into a nationwide movement. "I think we're at a tipping point," Ava said, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "The program is no longer just a project we started. It's become a part of these communities. They're taking ownership of it. And that's when true change happens." Liam nodded. "We've always said that it's not about us, it's about them. And now, we're seeing that come to life. I think we're ready to take the next step." Ava raised an eyebrow. "What next step?" Liam leaned back in his chair, a thoughtful expression on his face. "It's time to think even bigger. We've proven that the program works in schools, but what if we took this beyond the classroom? What if we could build partnerships with local governments, renewable energy companies, and nonprofits to create real-world projects for these students to work on? Projects that have an immediate impact on their communities. Imagine if we could get students involved in building solar grids for towns that don't have access to reliable energy, or if they could design affordable solutions for water purification in developing areas." Ava's eyes widened. "That's ambitious, but it could be huge. It could show the world what these kids are capable of." Liam's heart raced at the thought. This was the kind of impact they had always dreamed of, the kind that would not only transform the students' lives, but also change the communities around them. They weren't just teaching students to solve problems. They were giving them the tools to become leaders in their own right, to make lasting change where it was needed most. "We need to start small with pilot projects," Liam continued. "Get a few communities involved, create partnerships, and see how we can integrate our curriculum with real-world applications. If we can prove that students are capable of handling projects like this, we can push it to a larger scale." Ava smiled. "Let's do it." The next few months were a whirlwind of activity as Liam and Ava put their plan into action. They worked with local governments, schools, and organizations to identify communities that would benefit from these real-world projects. The idea was to give students a chance to work on projects that were not only educational, but also had a direct, positive impact on the lives of the people in those communities. One of the first projects they launched was a partnership with a small town in Nevada that had been struggling with unreliable electricity. With the help of local engineers and renewable energy experts, the students worked to design and implement a solar-powered grid that would provide the town with sustainable energy. It was a huge challenge, but the students were excited to take it on. Liam visited the town during the final stages of the project. As he walked around, he saw the students, some of them only 16 or 17 years old, working alongside engineers, installing solar panels and setting up the necessary infrastructure. It was awe-inspiring to watch them collaborate with professionals and see how far they had come since the beginning of the program. One of the students, Emily, who had been in the program for over a year, walked up to Liam with a huge smile on her face. "We did it," she said, her voice full of pride. "The system is live. The town has power." Liam's chest swelled with pride. "This is amazing, Emily. You and your team. This is what it's all about. You've just made a real difference." As the solar project in Nevada was completed and the impact of the program continued to grow, Liam realized that they were no longer just a small initiative. They were part of a movement that was reshaping education and empowering young people to solve some of the world's most pressing problems. The ripple effect they had set in motion had become something much bigger. It wasn't just about teaching kids to build solar panels or design wind turbines anymore. It was about giving them the power to change the world, and they were doing just that. Liam looked at the students, their faces beaming with pride, and he knew that this was only the beginning. The future was theirs to shape, and he couldn't wait to see where they would take it. The months that followed the solar project in Nevada were filled with momentum and new partnerships. Liam and Ava worked tirelessly to scale the program, building new pilot projects in rural communities across the country. From small towns in Georgia with high rates of unemployment and energy poverty to indigenous reservations in Montana, the program's reach began to extend far beyond what they had ever imagined. One afternoon, Liam found himself in a meeting with a group of state education officials and local leaders in Massachusetts. They were discussing the future of education and how programs like his could fit into broader efforts to close achievement gaps and provide equitable opportunities for all students. As the meeting progressed, one of the state officials, a woman named Rachel, spoke up. "I've been following your work for a while, Liam," she said, "and I'm really impressed. The focus on real-world problem-solving and social justice is exactly what our students need. But how do you manage to balance this mission with the need for sustainability and scalability?" Liam took a deep breath. "It's a constant challenge, but it's also what keeps us focused. We've learned that staying true to our core values, empowering students, building relationships with the communities we serve, and creating projects that have a tangible impact has been key. Scaling thoughtfully, with input from students and educators, is how we ensure that the program doesn't lose its soul." Rachel's eyes met his. "I think that approach could help us think differently about education at a state level. There's so much potential for these programs to not just educate students, but also to transform entire communities." As the conversation turned to future opportunities, Liam began to see a clear vision of what their movement could become. The next frontier wasn't just about expanding the program. He envisioned a new era of educational collaboration where schools, communities, and governments came together to create opportunities for students that went beyond the traditional classroom. That evening, Liam and Ava sat together, brainstorming ways to take their work to the next level. "We've created a model that works," Ava said, a determined look in her eyes. "But now it's time to dream bigger. What if we could shift the entire education system toward a more hands-on, project-based approach?" Liam nodded. "Exactly. And not just in STEM, but across all subjects. Imagine a world where students learn to think critically, solve real-world problems, and see themselves as part of a movement for change. That's the future I want to fight for." Ava's eyes lit up. "We need to bring in policymakers, teachers, business leaders, and community organizations. It can't just be one program. It needs to be a coalition for change." Over the next few months, Liam and Ava began to form partnerships and build a coalition of stakeholders committed to educational reform. They organized roundtable discussions, workshops, and conferences aimed at bringing together educators, government officials, industry leaders, and community activists. The conversations were full of energy and possibility, with ideas flowing about how to make real, systemic change. One day, at a conference held in New York City, Liam found himself standing on stage, sharing the story of the program and its impact. Education shouldn't just be about getting a job, he said, his voice firm. It should be about preparing students to lead, to innovate, to make a difference. We've seen firsthand that when students are given the chance to learn through action and project-based learning, they not only gain academic skills but also the resilience, creativity, and empathy that the world needs right now. The audience erupted into applause, and afterwards, a young woman named Maria approached him. "Your story is so inspiring," she said, her eyes bright with hope. "I'm a teacher, and I see firsthand how disengaged so many of my students are. This kind of learning could make a world of difference." Liam smiled, feeling the weight of their collective mission. "We're just getting started," he said. "But it's teachers like you, and students like Maria, who are going to be the ones to make this happen." Back in their office, Ava looked over some new proposals and research reports. "The coalition is gaining momentum," she said, tapping a finger against the table. "But there's still so much to do. We need to build a model that can be replicated nationwide." Liam leaned back in his chair. "I believe we can. And I believe the key is partnerships, not just between schools and organizations, but with students and communities. They need to feel ownership of the process, to see their ideas and voices matter." Ava's eyes met his. "That's the beauty of what we've built. It's not just about teaching. They're learning to think differently, to solve problems, to act as leaders." A few weeks later, Liam traveled to a small, economically disadvantaged town in rural Tennessee. This town had reached out to the program, asking for help with a local challenge: access to clean water. Through conversations with community leaders, Liam and Ava had discovered that many residents had to rely on bottled water because of contamination in their wells. The thought of students from this community designing solutions to provide clean, affordable water filled Liam with hope and determination. Over several days, students and mentors collaborated on projects, developing water filtration systems, public education campaigns, and sustainability models. It was grueling work, but the excitement and creativity of the students made every effort worthwhile. On the last day, as the systems were tested and prepared to go live, Liam watched one of the students, a boy named Marcus, explain the filtration process to his peers. "This isn't just learning," Marcus said with a grin. "It's making a difference." Liam's eyes filled with tears of pride. "Exactly," he said. "This is what we're here to do, to teach, to inspire, and to empower you to solve problems that matter." Back at headquarters, the ripple effect of their work continued to grow. The coalition was laying the groundwork for a new era of education, one that valued real-world learning, student agency, and community collaboration. A year later, legislation was passed that redefined educational priorities in multiple states, encouraging hands-on, project-based learning and expanding opportunities for underserved students. Liam and Ava watched as the next generation of students carried the torch of innovation, resilience, and hope. It wasn't just a change in curriculum. It was a new way of thinking, of teaching, and of learning. The future wasn't uncertain anymore. It was filled with possibility. One evening, Liam and Ava found themselves sitting on the front steps of the community center where it all started. The sky was turning shades of deep purple and orange, signaling the end of another day filled with possibility and progress. "Look at what we've done," Ava said, a tear of joy in her eye. Liam squeezed her hand. "We did it together. And it's just the beginning." The ripple effect of their work would echo through the generations, changing the way education was delivered, the way students learned, and the way communities collaborated to shape a better future. And as Liam looked out over the horizon, he knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, there would always be hope, and always the belief that change was possible. Months passed, and the ripple effect that Liam and Ava had sparked was beginning to expand far beyond the borders of the United States. Their innovative educational program was gaining international attention. As governments, nonprofits, and corporations took note of the transformative potential of project-based learning, new opportunities for global collaboration began to surface. Liam sat in a conference room in Paris, surrounded by leaders from across the globe. They had gathered to discuss how to integrate renewable energy education into the core of global educational systems. As Liam shared the success stories of their program in American communities, he could feel the weight of the room's attention. The global leaders were listening. Really listening? Liam, we've seen how this works on a small scale, said Jean-Pierre, a French government official. But how can we implement this on a national level, here in France? What do we need to do to make it a reality? Liam had anticipated this question. It was the same question he had faced in the early days of the program. The answer was simple yet complex. It had to be community-driven. It had to be about building relationships between students, teachers, local governments, and industries, every sector working together for a common purpose. First, we need to start with the teachers, Liam said. They are the ones who can make this change possible. We must give them the tools and resources they need to bring project-based learning into their classrooms, and then connect them with the communities they serve. Whether it's creating energy solutions for underserved areas or developing local sustainability projects, students will rise to the challenge when they feel they're making a real-world impact. Ava, who was sitting beside Liam, nodded in agreement. We've learned that when students are given the agency to lead and make decisions, they don't just learn, they transform. And that's what we need to create on a global scale. Jean-Pierre looked around the table. This is the future of education, not just in terms of renewable energy, but in every field. Let's take the next step. The conversation that day marked the beginning of a new chapter. Over the next year, Liam and Ava found themselves traveling across Europe, Asia, and South America, building partnerships with educators and governments eager to adopt their model. From Brazil's Amazon rainforest, where students created sustainable solutions to deforestation, to rural India, where young minds worked to develop affordable irrigation systems, the program began to take root in diverse cultures and environments. In Africa, a partnership with an international NGO brought the program to Kenya's slums, where the challenge was clean water access. There, students worked together to create water filtration systems using locally sourced materials. By the end of the project, the system was delivering clean water to over 1,000 households, and the students involved had gained skills they never dreamed possible. Liam and Ava found themselves at the heart of a global network, a network of students, educators, activists, and leaders all working toward a better, more sustainable future. They had gone from teaching young people about renewable energy to inspiring a generation of changemakers who were tackling global issues with creativity and hope. One afternoon, while on a conference call with a team in India, Liam received a message from home. It was from Rachel, the Massachusetts official who had first introduced him to the concept of transforming education at a state level. She had some exciting news. I just wanted to let you know, Liam, Rachel said through the phone, her voice full of enthusiasm. The pilot programs in Massachusetts are working even better than expected. Not only are the students thriving, but they're inspiring teachers to rethink how they approach education. In fact, the governor is considering making this model a core part of our state's educational curriculum. This could be a turning point for the entire country. Liam's heart swelled with pride. It was moments like these, moments when they saw their vision manifest into real, tangible change that made every challenge worth it. That's incredible, Rachel. Thank you for all the hard work you and your team have put in. This is just the beginning. As the call ended, Liam sat back in his chair, reflecting on how far they had come. What had once been a small project focused on creating solar panels and solving local problems had now become a movement that was spreading across continents, one school, one community, and one student at a time. Back in their office, Ava was already brainstorming ways to continue scaling their work. Liam, I think we need to start focusing on the next step. How do we sustain this on a global scale? We can't just rely on governments and organizations to do this on their own. We need to build a model that is self-sustaining, one that doesn't just depend on external funding. Liam nodded, deep in thought. You're right. We need to create a framework where the program can continue to thrive, even in places where resources are scarce. One that builds local capacity and empowers communities to take ownership of their educational journey. What if we created an international network of schools and organizations that share resources, knowledge, and best practices? Ava suggested. A network where every community that participates not only gets the tools they need, but also contributes to the global knowledge base. Students in Kenya can teach students in the US about water filtration, while students in the US can share their innovations in renewable energy. It's a two-way exchange. Liam's eyes lit up. I love it. That's the kind of global collaboration we need. It's not just about us giving. It's about everyone contributing to a shared vision of change. The vision of an interconnected, global network of education and innovation began to take shape. With the support of their growing coalition, Liam and Ava began drafting the blueprint for what would eventually become the Global Education for Sustainable Development (GSD) network, a platform for students, educators, and communities around the world to collaborate, share resources, and work on projects that addressed local and global challenges. As the GSD network took off, it became clear that the movement was no longer just about renewable energy or project-based learning. It was about creating a new framework for how education could function in the 21st century, one that was collaborative, community-centered, and geared towards solving real-world problems. And it wasn't just about teaching students. They were teaching the world how to solve problems together with creativity, compassion, and ingenuity. Liam and Ava stood on a rooftop in New York City, looking out over the skyline. The sun was setting, casting a golden hue over the buildings below. "Look at what we've built," Ava said, her voice filled with awe. Liam smiled, his eyes reflecting the vast horizon ahead. "We've built something bigger than ourselves. We've built a movement." And as the world below them bustled with activity, they knew that the ripple effect they had started would continue to spread far and wide, changing the course of education and the future of the planet, one student, one community, and one project at a time. What do you think the next chapter should focus on? Should we delve deeper into the development of the Global Education for Sustainable Development Network, or explore the impact on specific communities as they implement the program? Let us know your thoughts. The years that followed saw the Global Education for Sustainable Development (GSD) network evolve into a global movement. What had started as a small initiative with a few pilot projects was now a transformative force, influencing not only educational systems but also reshaping communities worldwide. From the remotest villages to bustling metropolises, young minds were driving change in ways no one had imagined. The program's success was undeniable. Governments, businesses, and educational institutions began adopting the project-based learning model on a broader scale. But as Liam and Ava continued their global travels, they realized that the true power of the movement wasn't just in its expansion. It was in the hearts of the students, teachers, and communities who had embraced the change and made it their own. One day, as Liam stood in a large auditorium in Tokyo, he was welcomed by an excited crowd of students, teachers, and educators from around the world. It was the Global Education Summit, a once-a-year event that brought together thousands of changemakers to share ideas, showcase innovations, and discuss how to push the boundaries of education further. "Welcome to the future of education," Liam said as he stepped onto the stage. "When we started this journey, we couldn't have known just how far it would go. But what's most incredible is that it's not about us. It's about all of you, students, teachers, and community leaders, who have taken this idea and made it your own. You are the ones who are truly changing the world." The crowd erupted in applause, and Liam's heart swelled with pride. As he looked out into the audience, he saw young faces eager to share their stories. Students who had designed solar panels to power schools in rural Africa, young engineers who had created low-cost irrigation systems in India, and students from across Europe who had developed sustainable farming solutions for their local communities. After the speech, Liam was approached by a young woman from Brazil named Sophia. She was one of the program's first graduates and had become a key figure in the movement's expansion in Latin America. "Liam, your program changed my life," Sophia said, her voice full of emotion. "When I was in high school, I didn't see a future. But through your project-based learning program, I learned that I could make a real difference in my community. Now, I'm working with other students to bring renewable energy solutions to underserved areas in Brazil. I'm just one of many, but I know we're all making an impact." Liam was speechless for a moment. "Sophia, that's incredible. You've taken the idea and built something bigger than we ever imagined. This is what it's all about. This is the legacy we hoped for." Back in the United States, the first GSD-supported school had just celebrated its 10-year anniversary. The school had become a beacon of hope for underserved communities, with a curriculum that integrated project-based learning, sustainability, and real-world problem-solving. Over the years, it had produced students who went on to become innovators, leaders, and activists in fields ranging from clean energy to healthcare. At the anniversary event, Liam and Ava stood at the front, watching the crowd of alumni, teachers, and students. The transformation of the school and the surrounding community was a testament to the power of education to inspire change. "I can't believe it's been 10 years, Ava said, her eyes full of gratitude. "It feels like yesterday that we were just starting with a handful of students. And now look at this." Liam nodded, a sense of fulfillment settling in his chest. "We've come so far, but the work isn't done yet. This is just one school, one community. There are still so many more to reach." Later that evening, as they sat together on the porch of their home, watching the sunset, Ava turned to Liam with a thoughtful look. "We've created something amazing, but I can't help but wonder, what happens when we're not here anymore? What kind of legacy do we leave behind?" Liam smiled, taking her hand. "The legacy is already here, Ava. It's in the students who are leading the change. It's in the communities that have embraced this model and made it their own. It's in the fact that education is no longer just about memorizing facts. It's about solving real-world problems and making a difference." Ava looked out over the horizon, her gaze thoughtful. "I think we've done what we set out to do. We've shown the world that education can be a powerful tool for change, and that the future is in the hands of young people." As the years continued to unfold, Liam and Ava's work was recognized globally. They were invited to speak at prestigious universities, participate in international summits, and consult for governments and organizations that were working to reshape education for the future. But even with all the accolades, they never lost sight of what mattered most: the students whose lives they had touched and the communities whose futures they had helped shape. One afternoon, Liam received a letter from an alumni of the very first school they had worked with. The letter was written by Marcus, the young boy from Tennessee who had helped design the water filtration system years ago. Now, Marcus was a young man studying environmental science at a top university, and his letter was filled with gratitude. "Liam," the letter began, "I just wanted to take a moment to thank you. Your program changed my life in ways I could never have imagined. I'm now pursuing a career in environmental science because I want to help people like my family who don't have access to clean water. I hope to one day work with communities around the world, just like you did for me. Thank you for believing in me when I didn't believe in myself." Tears welled in Liam's eyes as he read the letter. This was why they had started this journey: to see young people like Marcus take the lessons they had learned and pay them forward to future generations. In the years that followed, the GSD network continued to grow, with new schools, new projects, and new leaders emerging all over the world. From Africa to the Americas, from Asia to Europe, the movement had become a global force for change. It was no longer just an educational program. It was a revolution in how the world viewed education itself. Liam and Ava, now in their later years, continued to mentor the next generation of leaders, knowing that their work was far from over. But as they looked back on their journey, they knew they had already created a legacy that would last long after they were gone. They had sparked a global movement that was rewriting the future of education, one student, one community, and one project at a time. What do you think the next phase of the movement looks like? How can the program continue to evolve in the face of global challenges? Would you like to explore the story of one of the students or communities impacted by this educational revolution? Let us know your thoughts.